of School Directors, December 7, 1998. Tonight's meeting is our annual reorganization meeting, followed by our monthly work session. The meeting is being videotaped for community cable channels. Individuals attending this meeting and intending to speak to the board should be aware that they are being videotaped. In order to meet the requirements of the Pennsylvania Sunshine Law, it is necessary to record the names of all citizens who speak to the board during the meeting. To assure compliance with this requirement, it is essential that those planning to address the board come to the microphone and state their name and address. Members of the audience are asked to limit their questions and comments to no more than 5 minutes. This limit will permit time for all those who wish to speak to the board to do so, and whenever members of the audience exceed this time limit, the board president may ask the individual to yield the microphone to the next speaker, and this is in reference to Board Policy 8344.2. At this time, would our solicitor please lead us in a pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We need 2 board members tonight. Okay.
Part of the chair fell through the floor. He's trying to knock me off.
He falls?
Okay. Were you all amused? That was for your entertainment. Moving on, Ms. Liberowski, would you do a roll call, please?
Yes. Allen.
Here.
Hill.
Here.
Mosey.
Here.
O'Donnell.
Here.
Scher. Sherpinski.
Here.
Schilling.
Here.
Mengel.
Here. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, before any action is taken by this board, we have to offer an opportunity for audience as citizens. This time is your time. Anybody wishing to speak to a matter before the board prior to our vote, specifically action immediately will be the reorganization vote and the possibility of a candidate to replace the unexpired term of Sharice Krieger. Those of you that would wish to come forward, please do so and state your name and address. Is there anybody? Yes, sir.
Is this an appropriate time to make a dedication?
Yes, you may.
My name is Charles David Bailey. I live at 953 Garfield Avenue, Upper Gwinnett Township. I would like to dedicate this book to the North Penn High School Library. It was written by a graduate of North Penn High School who was a foreign exchange student in 1982. He was brought to this country by Spanish Heritage. The national coordinator for Spanish Heritage is Vicky Arachaga, who lives in Lansdale, and Jose lived at our home while he attended North Penn. While he was at North Penn, he took a course from Tom Plumette in computers, and I was just learning a computer at home in Old Osborne. And he became interested in computers, and he went back to Spain, and he learned about computers, and he went to work for Ericsson, a consulting company in Sweden, where he helped design the railroad control system for the Barcelona Games in the late 80s. Then he went to work with Digital, and when he was with Digital, he was assigned to install the SAP R3 system for the telephone company of Portugal. And he did that with a lot of help from other people. And when he got all done, he wrote this book. This book is 1,000 pages. It's called the SAP3 Handbook. It's published by McGraw-Hill. Jose wrote it in English. And I just wanted to let you know that this is a great book. It's gotten terrific reviews. The average rating on Amazon.com is 4.5 stars out of 5. It's been their number 1 seller, number 1, number 2, 3 seller every week since it was first published a year ago. And I think everyone should be proud of the work that Jose did. And I think this is a great tribute to the kinds of opportunities that North Penn offers to students who have a desire to take advantage of the opportunities that are there. I thank you.
Okay. Mr. Bailey, I'll accept that book, but then I will have, all donations must be accepted by the full board at an action meeting. I'll accept it as board president, and then it'll be on the action meeting for the 17th if all is appropriate.
Okay.
And a proper donation
Yes.
slip provided to you, and a thank you.
Okay, should I give it to
Please
someone
do.
now?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Again, a round of applause for not only this fine 1982 student, but Mr. Charles Bailey. Ladies and gentlemen, anybody else, please? Again? Thank you. At this time...
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Would you please give us a synopsis of the book at the next meeting so we know whether...
I'll begin reading it tonight.
You know, it's funny
Now
you should
would
bring
be
that
good,
up,
Bob.
Mr. Allen, because I thought maybe you would do a fine job on curriculum.
I can't read that many books.
Okay. At this time, are there any nominations for the capacity of President Pro Tem for purposes of this evening's meeting?
I'll nominate John Schilling to be president.
Is there a second?
I second.
Motion by Shapinsky, second by O'Donnell. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to move to open nominations for election of president to one-year term. Is there a motion?
I'll nominate Donna Mengel for board president.
And I'll second that. Any other nominations? I move to close nominations.
All those in favor?
All those in favor? Sorry.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nominations are closed. Take a roll call vote on the close of nominations.
Allen.
What's the question?
Whether nominations should be closed.
I can't hear you.
Whether nominations should be closed. Allen.
Yes.
Hill.
Yes.
Mosey.
Yes.
O'Donnell.
Yes.
Sierpinski.
Yes.
Schilling.
Yes.
Mengel.
Yes.
Now, the main motion is all in favor of Donna Mengel for school board president, indicate by stating aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
No.
All right, take a roll call vote on that, please.
Allen.
No.
Hill.
Yes.
Mosey.
No.
O'Donnell.
Yes.
Sierpinski.
Yes.
Schilling.
Yes.
Mengel.
Yes. Okay, are there any nominations for election of vice president for a one-year term?
I nominate Don Hill for vice president.
So motion for Hill, there's a second by Mosey. Motion was by Sierpinski. Are there any nominations?
I move the nominations be closed.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Sierpinski Schilling to close nominations. Vote on the closing of the nominations. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. There's a motion on the floor then again that Don Hill, election of a vice president for a one-year term. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. Okay, before you folks is a schedule of meetings for the calendar year 1999. I need a motion and a second. Recommended approval.
So move.
Motion by Mosey,
Second.
second by O'Donnell. Questions?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
On the schedule, do I understand the last sentence to mean that we will advertise work sessions also as action meetings in case we need them? Is that what I'm understanding?
So that, Doctor.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what they
The
said.
last sentence, do I understand that to mean that our work sessions will be advertised as also action meetings so that we can take action on those, at those meetings if we choose?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. 6 on your reorganization agenda.
Madam President, I have a motion to bring to the floor.
Yes, sir.
I have a motion to appoint Terry Prykowski to the open seat vacated by Sharice Krieger to end, I believe, in December of 1999.
I'll second
Right.
that.
Okay. Motion by Shapinsky, second by O'Donnell, to appoint Teresa Prokowski, I believe of Hatfield, for the unexpired term of Sharice Krieger. Are there any questions?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Why are we doing this tonight when it wasn't on the agenda?
It wasn't on the agenda, to my knowledge, because at the time that the agenda was established and sent out to the board, there had been no consensus at the time that I called each and every one of you to seek if there was a clear-cut consensus. By this afternoon, there was a consensus established because also necessary to announce to the public, I am in receipt of a letter from Deborah Cheney Giles withdrawing her name from consideration for the appointment. In doing so, it made a clear-cut consensus.
Have the other people who put their name into nomination been notified that they could come and speak tonight? Because it was going to be voted on tonight?
Nobody received any special notification that they could speak tonight. It's an action meeting and duly advertised as such. Anybody can speak tonight.
Was Mrs. Burkowski told it would be voted on tonight?
I am unaware. She can speak for herself. No, unless you would come forward and choose to do that on your own.
It just
It's
seemed
not
to me
required.
that... Well, I didn't know. Go ahead. Never mind.
Are there any other comments?
Just one, Madam President. Mr. Solicitor, do I, as a board member, have a right to bring any fact into an action meeting and open it up for a motion on the floor?
I'm sorry, I can't hear what you're saying.
Do I, as a board member, have the right to bring a motion to the floor under an action meeting?
Yes, the action meetings are appropriately advertised. If either if the matter either is specifically advertised for the action meeting or there's a general purpose action provision that is incorporated into the notice for the meeting, then yes, the motion is appropriate.
Thank you.
For additional information that I feel I should bring to your attention as board president, it's my responsibility often to seek consensus on the board. Last week I called every single board member, including the absent member, Shar. I asked each one if they had a preference for an appointment based on the 8 resumes that each board member was given. I believe those applicants that wish to have their resume out to the public, those are available tonight. Ms. Liberowski?
Yes.
Okay. There are, I believe, 3 applicants that did not wish their resume to be put out to the public. The rest are here. In calling each one, I asked 2 questions. Did you have a clear-cut selection? Do you wish open interviews? There was a consensus of those that did not wish open interviews because they did have a clear first and second selection. There were those, myself included, that did not care whether we had them or not. Each board member told me at least one candidate they supported immediately. One board member gave me 3 that they would consider. Every board member had 1, 2, or 3 considerations out of 8. To have held open interviews, to bring in 5 other people that not one board member had the consideration for immediately would not have been fair to their time nor our time. Tonight's selection has consensus, but support of the 8 applicants came down to 3 names among 8 board members. I believe there's a motion and a second on the floor.
Madam President, just interject one
Yes,
word.
sir.
I'm in support of the motion, but I think it's appropriate to say that I want to, and I think the board does, wants to thank all 8 members who took the time and and sent in their resume and sent in their desire to be part of this board. And that takes an effort, and that shows your interest in the school district. And all of these people are fine people. And we have to make a decision, the board has to make a decision on who we believe can fill this term out for the next year. But I want you to all to assure that all the candidates that applied were appreciative of that.
All in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Roll call, Ms. Liberowski.
Hill,
Yes.
Mosey,
Yes.
O'Donnell,
Yes.
Sierpinski,
Yes.
Schilling,
Yes.
Allen,
I would like to preface my no by saying it is not a reflection of Mrs. Prykowski, her ability to do the job. But my vote is no.
Mangle.
Yes. Ms. Prokowski, would you stand and
Let's see, announce the result. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
For those of you that are interested, Ms. Prokowski's resume is available to the public. She was one of the applicants that was willing to release that, to say the least. She is a mother of 5 children from Hatfield with an MBA. She currently works at Merck, and she has a considerable resume, and very, very proud and pleased to serve with her again.
Motion to adjourn this meeting?
Motion to adjourn, is there a second?
Excuse me, can we just
Yes, sir.
allow Christine to announce the vote that's required?
That was 6 in favor and 1 against.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Solicitor, thank you. Motion to adjourn? Ladies and gentlemen, in 5 minutes, we'll start the work session. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to call the meeting to order for the December 7th, 1998 work session, North Penn School District. For purposes of television, this work session is following the reorganization of North Penn Board of School Directors. Before we begin, I'd like to announce, for purposes of the press and for the record, that there were 2 executive sessions. One was held by the Personnel Committee on 11/30/98, and it was an executive session of the Personnel Committee. This evening at 6:30, again, an executive session was held this evening for the full board. Both sessions were matters of personnel. At this time, I'm going to ask Art Wood if he would come forward, and Mr. Wood, if you would, come and handle the engineering services portion of this evening's meeting, because I know you promised to be quick.
Quick, very quick. You have in your packet a green sheet, and I am suggesting that we bring this forward at the action meeting on December 17th. It's for engineering services for the Inglewood driveway and parking lot upgrades. And as you can see, we did request proposals for engineering services from a number of firms that we've worked with before. We received 4 proposals, and the low proposal is Robert E. Blue Consulting Engineers, PC, at 10.5% of the total construction cost. It is our recommendation that we engage Mr. Blue to do the design and meet all the requirements of the RFP to take us through the bidding process, bring the total project cost back to the board, and then it would be your option as to whether you want to proceed with it at that time. And you would also have an opportunity in the FY99 2000 budget to either put it in as a budget item or to get creative as it relates to bond funding.
Mr. Wood, I'm concerned about the range here, 10.5% to 40%. Any rationale for that?
The rationale typically when you're soliciting quotes for engineering service for site work is usually based on how busy the firm is. And it's obvious that Stout Tacanelli has a lot of work right now. So we're not unhappy with the 10-5, 12-5, and the 12-7 fund.
Okay, so some contractors are hungrier than others.
Some engineering firms are very busy, other engineering firms have room to take on additional work.
Okay, questions from the board, right?
Madam President, I would just like to say that since this was awarded in October, or the bids were opened in October, it has been on the agenda, the last two agendas at the facility committee meetings. And there are many things that will go into this project, not the least of which is permits and requirements and anything that may come out of Towamencin in regards to this matter. So it's going to be, although we're anxious to resolve this problem because it is a safety issue as quickly as possible, just want to point out to the board and to the community, because of circumstances that may be beyond the committee or the board's control, and because you have other municipality involved, it could take a little longer than we hope, but we will do everything we can to move this project forward as quickly as possible.
Any other questions to the right or to the left?
Yeah, I have a few.
Yes, sir.
Art, how come you can't bring forward a proposal of the construction side of this cost?
Excuse me again, I can't.
How come you can't bring forward the cost of this project, less the fee we pay our engineer, and of course the additional charges or anything else that might occur when we try to bring this forward for township approval? Isn't there a baseline here where we're starting from?
We have a baseline. This project is very similar to the project that we did at Gwynn Nor. And many of you are familiar with what we did there to correct the problem. That project was a $55,000 project, but we had existing stormwater control in place there. We have anticipated in our RFP that this project should have a budget of $100,000 to $125,000.
Why such a huge change if we're going to
Huge change. We're going to have to do something with stormwater retention, probably a basin in the front yard, or possibly an underground basin. We're on a state highway, so we have to do a PennDOT highway occupancy permit, and there'll probably be some other requirements that we didn't have at Gwynn Nor with Upper Gwinnett that we will have with Towamencin.
Vince, if I can say, this is why I said there's an awful lot of things that are going to go into this before this comes out of committee and goes to the board. This is, there's an awful lot of things that have to be looked at and considered before we can, I had the same question you had with Art. It's almost like we got kind of an open-end agreement here, 10% of what? It's almost like we're saying whatever he comes up with.
Well, my question, I guess, was revolving around, I mean, I know it's a safety issue, and I know it's a serious concern, because, you're looking at almost a victim of a car accident out there.
Right.
When I was on foot, and my kids go to Inglewood, so I know the problem extensively. Anybody who wants to drive over there any rainy day will know what it is. I guess my only concern is this thing, how long is this project, going to take? I mean, say we come up with the funding for this thing, and we get a low bidder here to come in with a project, and he goes through the process for development. And I know this board has felt the sharp end of Towamencin's wit when it comes to land development. So I'd like to know, what's your earmark here for actually getting this project completed?
We would like to begin construction the day after school closes so that we would have it open for Labor Day, actually have it open. Our goal is to open it mid-August because a lot of our staff comes back in August.
In this proposal, you're not only going to fix the driveway problems with the drop-offs and pickups, you're also going to fix the parking problem they have, because right now, as it stands, we have our staff parking on the lawn.
We're going to add additional
event at that situation. They're parking on the playground in the back.
It's our intent to add additional parking as we did at Gwynn Nor. I think it's such a comparable project to Gwynn Nor, and you have to visit, if you haven't, Gwynn Nor to see what we did and what the fix was there.
There is a a memorial park for the principal who passed away a few years ago. Is that in jeopardy in this project?
We will not infringe on the Schickling Memorial Park.
No further questions.
Mr. Wood, two things. Because the project's so similar with Gwen Nor, and obviously you're dealing with two separate municipalities, Temenson and Upper Gwinnett, is there a possibility of taking the relatively fair, almost to the point of being lean, fees that came out of Upper Gwinnett and using them as a negotiating point with Temenson?
We will certainly, we won't, or we don't expect to do anything above and beyond what we're required to do, if that kind of puts it in perspective. We're going in hoping to do a simplistic project, but we're also hoping to do a project that complies with their engineer's request, quite frankly.
I guess I get nervous at how tree-happy the situation got over there at the VOTEC.
Well, we're all nervous about that. I guess I'm more nervous about the number of parking spaces. If you were building Englewood today in Towamencin Township, you would probably be required to put 250 parking spaces in. And that wouldn't leave us any green at Englewood, if you will.
Right.
I mean, if you look at Walton Farm, you'll see a very large parking lot. We can't face that. I mean, we're
Right.
restricted as to what we can do. And we're looking for all the cooperation we can get.
Last question is, I do not know the engineering firm here, choose not to mention it. Paperwork is already out there, but I thought this was the engineer for, I thought this group was the engineer for Temenson.
No.
Did I see that name before? There is no conflict of interest?
The engineer for Towamencin is not Robert Blue.
Thank you. Any other questions? Members of the audience, any questions regarding the Englewood project? Anybody? Yes, madam. Oh, okay, sorry. I got you on camera
Almost
anyway.
forced you to speak.
All righty, very good. Gentlemen of the board, is there a desire to put this on the agenda for the 17th?
I'd like to see it there.
Yes.
Okay. We've got consensus. Ms. Liberowski, would you add that? Also, to be added to that agenda, I heard some murmurings down this end of the table as to why Ms. Bukowski wasn't asked to come up and join us this evening, and it's for the obvious reason. She has not been sworn in by a local judge, and until she is, she does not become an official member of the board. She must take that oath first. So when she does, she will be installed at the next action meeting of the board. Ms. Liberowski, you are to send to her all documents that you would send any other board member effective immediately. Okay. All righty. At this time, I'd like to turn this meeting over to Mr. O'Donnell, but if I may, make a few comments. First of all, on behalf of the entire board, I would like to thank the very fine group of people that have volunteered to serve on this committee. I have to say, and certainly all the years that I've been here, and I think the only person to be through more redistricting matters has been Art Wood himself. But this has been probably the most productive group that has handled their charge without much fanfare or without much controversy. I guess that's yet to be seen. But the group has worked diligently, and to my knowledge, when there's infighting in a community group, we learn about it, and I have heard none of the sort. And thank all of you for cooperating and to the extent that you have, and for providing your time to the district. Also, just quickly, I'd like to confirm or affirm or dispel the fears that some of you have that there is a final decision tonight. That is not true. The paper was incorrect, that there was a final decision for this evening. Tonight is the first of 3 hearings that will be made available to you to come forward and speak to any matter to this project. The committee has a recommendation. This board will hear it for the first time this evening, and there is no decision. The only decision that will be made at an action meeting after those 3 hearings and 3 opportunities have been held. So those of you that have been concerned that this is a done deal, that's not true. And you're here to either applaud, question, or change that plan to the ability that you can. So I just wanted to dispel any fears that you might have. Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Madam President. A little background. In April of 1997, the Board of Directors approved a project to expand Knapp Elementary. This expansion was necessary to relieve crowded conditions at surrounding elementary schools. The Knapp project is on schedule to be completed prior to September 1999 and will increase the student capacity from 475 to 650 students. To better utilize the new instructional space and to relieve crowding, particularly at Gwynnor Elementary, a committee was identified to realign elementary attendance areas so that a better population balance would occur. I would first like to give, a special thank you to parents, principals, and administrators for the diligent work on the committee. I know they worked very hard. The purpose of the meeting tonight is for the realignment committee to present their proposal to the board in the public arena. Let me assure you, as Mrs. Mangel just said, that there's no decision has been made yet. This is a proposal for the board to consider. Following the presentation, the board members will have an opportunity to comment or ask questions of the committee, but there will be no board action on the proposal this evening. Those of you in attendance tonight will have 3 different opportunities to comment or raise questions regarding boundary changes. You may address the board this evening. You may attend one of the 2 public input sessions. The first meeting will be held this Thursday, December 10th from 7 to 9 p.m. and the second opportunity will be on Monday, next Monday, December 14th from 7 to 9 p.m. also. Both sessions will be held at the Educational Services Center. The public input sessions will be strictly to hear your comments regarding realignment. Committee members will be in attendance and each session will be videotaped so that all board members may be informed. Following these sessions, the committee will reconvene, consider public input, and return to the board in January with a recommendation. Now, before I turn it over to Don Venema, everyone has a right to speak for 5 minutes. The committee will answer your questions if we can answer a quick yes or no. But if it's going to go on and on, the committee will take notes, and then we can answer your questions on Thursday or Monday if it's going to really go on. Now I'd like to turn it over to Don Venema and the committee members who will show you the detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. I too would like to angle Mrs. Mengel's comments about the committee. I've worked with several different boundary committees in my career at North Penn, and this has been a very devoted, hardworking group of people to work with, and I'd truly like to extend my public appreciation for all the work that you've done. All of these decisions and all the deliberations over such issues that can become volatile take a lot of very careful, thoughtful, caring consideration, and I know that this group of people did that. The committee consisted of 13 different members, parents representing home and school associations from Knapp, Bridle Path, Montgomery, and Gwynnor, and in addition, the building principals from those schools, as well as members of our district administration, and of course, Mr. O'Donnell as our board liaison. We began our work in September and have met weekly since September to do a number of things. Obviously, we started out in our whole initiative with an understanding of what the role of committee would be, and that was to either develop several options or to look at several options and bring what the committee felt was appropriate to the school board. To identify guidelines that would guide the study, and I'll go over those in detail for you in a little bit. To review and conduct research, so there's a lot of time not just spent in meetings, but outside of the meetings, between meetings, conducting research on a number of things. District student enrollment patterns, both the current, past, and projections that are appropriate. Birth rates in the North Penn area. It's an aspect of any kind of study like this, since kindergarten enrollment is an important ingredient of the whole process. Projected housing starts. We all know that we're a growing community, and there are housing starts projected for various segments of the North Penn district. Obviously, we talked also about student capacity and what that means in terms of how many students can be adequately educated in our elementary schools. The guidelines are listed for you in the packet, and I'd ask that as we go through the presentation, you refer to the packet of information as well as to the map. The map gives you the visual. We would have liked to have had some overhead projections, but it's very difficult in the auditorium to do that in this setup. So you do have a map, and the map reflects the changes, and they'll be pointed out to you in detail as we go through the actual proposal. The guidelines is listed there. Of course, you need basic parameters to start with any kind of study of this magnitude and of this nature. We made assumptions that the class size guidelines that exist in the district of not more than 25 students per class in grades K to 3, nor more than 28 students in grades 4 to 6 would be a guide to the study. Second component, that the attendance areas that we develop should accommodate future growth. We looked at future growth in depth. We looked at it from the standpoint of as I said, of what we project will be our early grade enrollments, particularly in kindergarten and grade 1, as well as the housing aspects. The classroom space must be provided for special education programs, and we analyzed all of those programs and where they currently exist and whether they will remain in those schools or can be moved. We considered classroom space for art and music. In most of our schools, they have separate rooms for that function. In some of our schools, they don't, and they use carts and the teachers move from room to room. But that was a factor that we talked about and considered. We wanted a plan that would minimize the movement of children. Obviously, you can come up with all kinds of schemes and arrangements in which students would be moved, but we kept in mind throughout the process that this was an aspect that was very important. We wanted to consider the geographical proximity of the students in the neighborhoods to the school that they would attend and the amount of time that they would spend being transported. So transportation was an aspect of this as well. And finally, an impact on the middle school sending areas, because our elementary boundaries do or can have some impact and influence on our middle school boundaries as well. On the map, you will see that the middle school boundaries are identified in a dark blue line showing Penfield, Pembroke, and Pendale as they currently exist. We'll talk more about the impact on the middle school sending areas a little bit later. Before we get into the details, we want to spend some time sharing with you some of the information that we found regarding student enrollment, regarding housing starts, and information regarding capacity of our schools. First of all, student enrollment figures were examined from recent years to look for patterns primarily, and our focus was on the 10th day enrollment. Since that's what we start the school year with, those are the figures and numbers that we have used consistently throughout our process. Special attention was given, as I said earlier, to kindergarten and grade 1, since the enrollment in these grade levels have the most profound impact on a projection of enrollment. And there are a number of things that can be done to predict kindergarten enrollment. This isn't our formula, this isn't our procedure, this is the recommendations of organizations that do enrollment projections for schools, as well as based upon our experiences. The first thing that we needed to do was get some information about birth rates in the school system and compare birth rates with kindergarten enrollment 5 years hence. Those comparisons in our recent history were then used to make projections and determinations about how many students that are born in the North Penn School District actually end up in our kindergarten 5 years later. We came up with a percentage figure of 75% based on analysis of recent patterns that have existed in the district. With respect to first grade enrollment, we also realize that there's always an increase in our first grade enrollment from our kindergarten enrollment. And there are a lot of factors that contribute to that. Many parents choose to keep their children in all-day kindergartens, for example, in a private setting, and enroll their students as first graders in the school system. Our recent history indicates that approximately a 10% increase from the previous year kindergarten to the following year first grade is pretty typical. So we decided to use that number as we developed our projection numbers that I'll talk about a little bit later. The most recent kindergarten enrollment puzzled us, to say the least. We have a lot of discussion about kindergarten enrollment in 1998. We're not sure whether the enrollment, which is down from previous kindergarten enrollments significantly, whether that is an anomaly, something that's unusual for this year, or whether it's the beginning of a new trend. And so, because we couldn't tell that, and it's very difficult to tell that, we decided that kindergarten enrollment would be shown as a straight line projection. In other words, whatever the kindergarten was this year, we're projecting that kindergarten enrollment for next year in those same schools. Now, that's our best estimate on the way to handle that, and that was our approach as the committee deliberated. As I said earlier, we also used the 10% factor for first grade, although the numbers in 1998 were also an anomaly and showed an increase of 20%. After much discussion, we agreed that 10% is what our recent history has shown us, and therefore we use a 10% figure in our numbers that are on the sheet that defines that. So the committee spent a lot of time talking particularly about those grade levels, and we came to consensus that the best thing to do was consider these things in a general sense. Be aware of our kindergarten enrollment, of our birth rate circumstances, and also we spent a lot of time talking about the next topic that I'll ask Mr. Art Wood to talk about. Mr. Wood, you want to share with us and the board the information on housing starts and student capacity?
Thanks, Don. When we first began to assemble the committee, I felt it would be prudent to visit with the municipalities in our school district and determine just where we were going as far as housing starts are concerned. In your packet on page 5, you have a summary of housing starts, and I guess the only thing I would like to add to that, initially we started, and this is not in your packet, but I'll share it with you, we started with housing starts by municipality. And we learned that Hatfield Borough can expect to have 160 townhouses built. And we also learned that they would do 55 each in the first 2 years and 50 in the third year. We learned in Hatfield Township there were no approved housing starts. Now that may have changed since September, but as of October 1, there were no approved housing starts. Lansdale Borough has 18 single-family dwellings. Part of that is the small piece of land adjacent to Lansdale Catholic High School that is in the borough. Montgomery Township has 476 single-family dwellings and 251 townhouses for 727 total housing starts. So you can see by far that Montgomery is the area where we met our greatest concern. North Wales Borough has 10 single-family dwellings. Towamencin has 26 single-family dwellings and 55 townhouses, and Upper Gwinnett Township has 5 townhouses. So that's a total of 1,001 approved housing starts. Now, the way we counted some of those housing starts, and especially in Montgomery Township, in some of the communities that are under construction, we only counted what we referred to as to be built, the remaining houses to be built. And I am sure that since we did our work, some of them are built and occupied. But we took what was finished as of that date in meeting with Judy Starkin and Dan O'Pare, and then we also determined what was left to be built and approved in the various developments. If you look at page 5, you will see that we then took our housing starts and we really broke them down by attendance areas, existing attendance areas, current attendance areas, and the proposed attendance areas. And you can see for our 13 elementary buildings where our proposed housing starts fell. Initially in the current attendance area, and then of course in the right-hand column in the proposed attendance area. Once again, our large numbers being Gwyn Nor, which receives, as you know, many of the housing, or many of the children that come from the houses that are built in Montgomery Township. So that pretty much determines where we're going and how we use the housing start information to assist us. Don, and we'll talk more about it, the other thing that we did, we then, through our Edulog, which is our computerized busing information that we have in the transportation department, we were able to go back to similar housing developments and gain the kind of information we needed to establish the .31 elementary age students per housing unit. And we finally developed some consistency. We looked at a neighborhood, for an example, that has 33 houses, relatively new, and they send us 34 kids. That was an unusual neighborhood. When we finally started looking neighborhood by neighborhood, we were able to have a comfort level with the .31 youngsters, elementary youngsters per housing start. And as I said, your summary on page 5 will substantiate the units that are planned and the units that we were able to determine were approved by the various municipalities as of actually October 1. On page 6, we use in the North Penn School District a functional capacity for our buildings. And our functional capacity, if you look at the chart on page 6, you will see at a number of our buildings, bracketed behind the capacity, we have reflected the number of modular classrooms at each of those buildings. 6 at Gwyn Nor, 1 at Inglewood, 4 at Culp, 2 at Montgomery, 7 at Nash, and 3 at North Wales. So we wanted to use that information, and when we use that information, that does help us determine what our functional capacity is. In determining functional capacity, you need to remember, since we have an AM and a PM kindergarten, that we count double capacity for those classrooms. So if you go back and start looking at a floor plan and you try to determine how we determine functional capacity, we also have a drop, what we call a drop-off rate. Once we take the number of classrooms times 25 students, we know that students don't come in neat packages. So we drop off a number, and that gives us our functional capacity. In the left-hand column, you have the functional capacity. The center column is the 10th day enrollment, and of course, we reflect in the third column the current difference. You need to note that on the Knapp building, that capacity is based on the addition of 6 regular classrooms, and of course we'll have an art room, a music room, a new multipurpose room, a new IMC or library, new health suite, expanded cafeteria. But we added those rooms when we determined that the capacity at Knapp for September of '99 will be 650. Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Art. Just a couple of comments regarding housing starts. The assumption you can make is that our estimate, based on our looking at existing units, is that out of every 100 units, we would expect 31 elementary age students. And then again, that's based on taking a previous history and projecting it forward. Also, with respect to capacity, the capacity number for Gwyn Nor reflects the permanent modulars that are there. There are 2 additional modulars that are there just for this year to handle the overcrowding. If you look in the right-hand column, you can see that Gwyn Nor is 53 students beyond capacity at 10th day enrollment.
Dr. Venema, would you recognize Mr. Shapinsky's question?
Yes.
I have a question for Mr. Wood. Mr. Wood, can you please identify for me the housing starts in the proposed attendance area for the Knapp? It's 83 single-family dwellings. I believe that's Windermere or Windham. guy behind LC.
I'm not hearing you as well as I could. You're asking about the 83 houses?
I'm asking about the 83 single-family dwellings that you have identified in the proposed attendance areas under the NAP. I would assume that's the 83 homes behind LC?
That's correct.
Where are the 104 townhouses proposed for?
The 104 townhouses, the 104 townhouses are across the street from the Green Barrack on 202 and under construction.
Green
Excuse me? Where the Green Barrack, that's what I said. Yeah.
It's on 202?
On 202, across from Gwynmont Farms.
Mr. Wood, would you be able to provide me with the numbers for the section of bridle path that is under discussion from Roberts back to LC?
The numbers,
Of what's currently coming from that area right now?
yeah, we have that.
Could that be provided to me if you don't have it this evening?
Sure,
Could I
we
get
we
that?
have it this evening. And, you know, we took all of those areas when we started to look closer at changing boundaries, and we were able to get the count through the Transportation Department of the exact number of youngsters coming from those developments.
I would like that.
Okay? I don't have it here with me, but-
Thank you. I'm sorry to disrupt the presentation.
No, that's right.
We'll get that for you, Mr. Shapinsky. I have these numbers on a chart here. If you'd like to take a look at it later, we have it here too.
Okay, Mr. Wood, quickly, the .31 students anticipated from each housing start. Is there any percentage in that formula that would anticipate students that would go to private school?
No, we only based that on our public youngsters. We didn't go back, for an example, through our rider files to see which
Right.
youngsters from those same concentrated developments were going to private and non-public.
Okay, and the only other question I have is, in the past, we used to provide the district with 2 transitional first grades. We cut back to 1. Was there any consideration giving to adding an additional, bringing back a T1 once we had the space on
Not
board?
an additional T1.
We didn't make that assumption at this point.
Okay.
Art, can I add one other question I need clarification on? Under the proposed attendance area for bridle path, you have listed 17 single-family dwellings. How many are already built and how many aren't?
Question again, I'm sorry, I can't.
Under the proposed 17 single-family dwellings in the proposed attendance area for bridle path, what I would like to know is how many are existing today?
12 are built across, on Taylor Road, across from Bridle Path Road.
Brookshire or Briarwood or something.
Last time I drove in, there were only a couple not occupied, and I suspect that's a month ago, they're probably occupied.
Thank you.
Members of the board, are there any more questions for Mr. Wood for his
Yes.
specific area of coverage?
If I could.
Sure.
Mr. Wood, what consideration have we given for transportation? How is this going to affect our transportation?
Actually,
That's the only thing that wasn't included. I mean,
right, we did not spend a lot of time, because in discussion with John Cotran, with the minimal number of boundaries we're changing, he did not see a significant increase in cost for transportation. I mean, if you look at the proximity of Knapp
Right.
to some of the new boundaries of the new neighborhoods that will be going to Knapp under this proposal, it's actually closer to Knapp than it is to Brattleboro.
Right. And also, and perhaps I guess this question, from what I could gather, Dr. Venema, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, based on the numbers you gave, you recapped on page number 2, 47 from Gwen Nord to Gwinnett Square, 77 from Gwen Nord to Knapp, and 38 from Bridle Path to Knapp. It looks to me like 162 of our current students are the ones that are going to be most immediately affected. Am I correct in that, or?
If that's, yes, I think that's the total. 162 students.
Right.
There'd be 124 that would be moving from Gwynnor and
Right.
38 from Bridle Path.
Right, okay. And we'll be picking up 115 at Knapp and 47 be going to Gwinnett Square, right? We're talking 162 total. 124 and 38 respectively will be coming from Gwynnor and Bridle Path, and 115 and 47 will be going to Knapp and Gwinnett Square, respectively.
Correct.
Okay, and then the rest of what we're talking about is just projection. I had a question.
Mr. Mosey, could you do me a favor? Could we wait until the presentation? There will be a portion of that presented.
I wouldn't have
if we could
started.
go
It was
through-
started down there, Mr. O'Donnell. I wouldn't have interjected questions. I was going to wait till they were finished, but
Okay,
since
we
it
have more of a
started.
presentation. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to ask one of our committee members, a person who has been involved in an awful lot of boundary work in the North Penn School District, and someone who many of you are familiar with. She's participated on several different boundary committees throughout her time here in the North Penn School District, and I'm asked that she present the proposal this evening. This was not an easy decision, as we said. Much deliberation occurred. Many different neighborhood segments were analyzed, and the impact of moving this particular neighborhood or another neighborhood was studied in depth. The bulk of our meetings were devoted to just that type of analysis. These kinds of things are never easy decisions because there's always someone who's going to have to move to another school that doesn't want to. And that's something that's a reality in the nature of this kind of a study that occurs. Mrs. Mengel, you did indicate at one time that if there were any minority opinions on the committee that you wanted to hear those, and we discussed that
Absolutely.
in our committee meetings, and certainly they have the opportunity to indicate those tonight, but there was none that were indicated to me, but the question was posed to them. We debated about whether we would bring forth several different options and concluded that this truly was the best one in the minds of the committee, and it was their choice that we bring forth one proposal, the one that you'll be hearing tonight. So at this time, I'd like to ask Linda Abram to come up and walk you all through the proposal, refer to your maps and your text, and we'll make sure everyone understands what the actual boundary changes are being proposed.
Good evening. My name is Linda Abram. I'm from Upper Gwinnett. I have two children. Emily is at Gwynnor and Gregory's at Pembroke. As a past president of Home and School and an active volunteer in both schools, I was asked to participate in the realignment committee as vice president of coordinating council. I am honored to be a part of this committee, my third redistricting committee. Like the other two, this committee has worked very hard and has taken our task very seriously. All of the committee members chosen as the principals, home and school members, and representatives of the community, not their community, participated within the group structure, and no one member of the group had any greater influence than another. We are anxious to present our plan this evening to the board. We have confidence that the Board of School Directors will make the best decision possible at this time for the students of North Penn. Many hours were spent, both in our meetings and I know in our homes, reviewing, analyzing, and re-reviewing data. The task is not an easy one, as Don has said, and I feel the committee has accomplished what it was charged to do. I want to thank the committee members for their time and energy. They've entrusted me with the job of presenting the proposed plan, and I am honored to do so. As I proceed with explaining the plan before you, and I know you've all been looking and studying very carefully, I ask that both the community and the board listen with an open mind to the entire presentation and ask that you have patience and understanding as we proceed. Opportunities for public comment, as has been said before, will exist tonight, on Thursday the 10th, and next Monday the 14th. The committee has looked at North Penn and its elementary enrollment needs. Keep in mind that there are over 7,300 elementary students in our district. We know we have chosen the best plan for the district at this time. We realize that change is not easy, but we have confidence that the children, our faculty, staff, and administrators will all, with parents' support, adjust and move forward. It has been done before and will be proven again that children are resilient, and with our love and support, they will join their new classmates with enthusiasm and commitment to make their school the best that it can be. We are also committed to the knowledge that all of our 13 elementary buildings are special and unique in and of themselves, and that they are all excellent institutions of education for our students. I myself would be proud to send my children to any of the 13 buildings, and I know other committee members would agree with these sentiments. Now, as Don Veneman and Art have outlined, it's important to reiterate the many factors that were reviewed before our plan was finalized. The committee has been meeting weekly since September the 23rd, and many hours have been spent studying the plan. The proposed realignment best meets the needs of the guidelines and the needs of the buildings that exist at this time. The committee proposes changes that will affect Bridle Path, Gwyn-Nor, Knapp, and Gwinnett Square. As you can see, there is a description in the report that you have before you, and there is also a map. I ask that you refer to the map at this time, please. You will see in the map the dark blue shaded area. There are 47 students who currently go to Gwyn-Nor in this dark blue shaded area, and we are proposing that those students go to Gwinnett Square. Now, if you look at the medium shaded blue area southeast of North Wales Road, there are 77 students in this area, and they will be reassigned from Gwyn-Nor to Knapp. Finally, the students in the medium shaded blue area between 7th Street and Fellowship Park, excluding Roberts Lane, will move from Bridle Path to Knapp, a total of 38 students. These changes will produce the following. Of course, better utilization of Knapp with its additional expansion capacity. After all, that's what we did all this for. Number 2, increased enrollment at Gwinnett Square, where room exists to accommodate additional students. Number 3, we decrease Gwyn-Nor's population, which is currently above capacity, and which will meet challenges in the future with the projected housing starts. Number 4, we will decrease Bridle Path enrollment, which is approaching capacity, keeping in mind that movement within this area prevents future capacity crunches and again better utilizes neighboring Knapp School and its expansion. Page 7 shows the 5-year projection reflecting the boundary changes, the housing start impact, and the 10% kindergarten to first grade growth. These were explained by Dr. Venema. As anticipated, the committee discussed the impact that this plan would have on middle school. We will be discussing that shortly, and we will explain the 3 options that the committee feels exist as it relates to middle school. I appreciate your time in listening to my presentation. The map tells the story, but I think it's important for all of us to keep in mind that the committee spent many hours reviewing what is to come in the district with regards to housing starts, and this impacts schools. You may not have been aware of that before this evening. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the presentation, and we'll entertain questions in a little while. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. We want to talk a little bit about the status of the Knapp expansion project. Obviously, we're assured that it will be ready to occupy in September. And I know that Mr. Feely, the principal at Knapp, wants to say a few words regarding the expansion project, and I'll ask him to come forward at this time. Mr. Feely?
Sure he wants to say a few.
I have a whole pamphlet full here.
Yeah. Keep it short.
Thank you. Good evening. As all of us know who are sitting here this evening, that the planning stage of the Knapp construction project began well over a year and a half ago. And today we see our plans and designs quickly becoming a reality as the new 2,300 square foot library and our nurse's office are just a few weeks away from their grand opening. Of course, work is progressing in the back of the building where a normal-sized gym or multi-purpose room, such as the ones constructed at Gwinnett Square, Walton Farm, and Bridle Path, as well as 6 brand-new classrooms, an art room, and an expanded cafeteria are quickly taking shape. By September of 1999, Knapp will be ready to welcome well over 600 students and an increased staff of close to 40 professionals. Much planning and thought has already gone into deciding various aspects of our building, ranging from teacher room assignments, office relocations, computer lab design, down to the color and size of the new student desk and chairs. Now that all has to do with the physical preparation of Knapp Elementary School. However, my staff and I know that there are many students and parents filled with a lot of anxiety and hesitations about going to a different school, a new school, a school in which they haven't obviously attended before. We're anxious too. We've spent the past several months as a faculty discussing ways to relieve some of the anxieties which exist today. Discussions have already begun with Marie Walsh and Bonnie Rosen, principals of Bridle Path and Gwyn-Nor, with regard to transition types of activities involving both children and their parents who are being redistricted to Knapp. To this end, this evening I'm pleased to announce that it's the desire of my staff, my faculty, to hold an open house both during the day and the evening on Thursday, February 25th. The daytime hours will be from 9:30 until 3:30, and at night from 7 until 9 p.m. We want our new parents to visit us while we're in session during the day. We want parents and children to see the many positive characteristics of our building and the family atmosphere that exists. We also want you to see the changes which are all part of the $3.1 million construction program. We want to meet our new children and parents well before the opening of the new school year. Finally, Knapp Elementary School, like all the schools in the North Penn School District, strive to produce a caring and nurturing educational environment which is conducive to learning and so necessary for the development of the total child. This environment exists today at Knapp Elementary School and will continue to flourish as we receive and welcome our Bridle Path and Gwyn-Nor parents and children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Feely. That concludes our overview of the plan, but there's another aspect to the plan that I mentioned earlier, and that is the possibility of impact on middle school boundaries. So I'll call your attention again to the map and also to page 3, because if this option is the one that's chosen by the school board, then there will need to be some decisions made with respect to the boundaries for Pembroke and Pendale. Now, if you look on the map, you'll see the dark line that runs across the district defining the Pembroke-Pendale sending areas. You'll see that that line, as it currently exists, goes around the dark area where students would go to Gwynedd Square, and then directly through the lower portion of the Knapp boundary, and then up along 202 and out towards the edge of the district. If that boundary is not changed, if that boundary remains intact as you see it, then we face one scenario. As you know, we do have 3 elementary schools that do send some of their students to one middle school and some to another. Culp, Inglewood, and Bridle Path currently are what we call split sending schools in terms of middle school enrollments. So that currently exists in the district. If we were to change the boundaries for Pembroke and Pendale and send that dark blue segment headed towards Gwynedd Square into Pendale, as would happen with other Gwynedd Square students, and if we were to move the middle school boundary down along Welsh Road, following the newly defined lower portion of the NAP boundary, the NAP students all currently go to Penndale. So if we were to change those boundaries and move those students to Penndale, the impact, of course, would affect those middle school students, and it is reflected in scenario number 1 under the middle school impact. You can see that the enrollments for Pembroke and Penndale would be, as we estimate there, for both Brook and Dale for the next 3 years. Incidentally, the capacity, functional capacity of Pembroke and Penfield is 950. The capacity for Penndale is listed at 1,640 students. So you can see that we're within the capacities in that scenario. Scenario 2 is the circumstance that would occur if we kept the boundaries exactly as they are. In other words, just as you see them drawn on the map, if they would remain as such, then the populations would be as you see them listed there. The concern that we have with the capacity of Pembroke being 950 approximately there, 975 is what is projected for Pembroke 3 years hence, and so the board may need to reconsider what to do to deal with that circumstance sometime down the road. The third scenario is a split of the two. In other words, send the dark blue area students to Penndale and keep the medium shaded blue area by the Montgomery Mall and the lower portion of the NAP at Pembroke. In other words, move the boundary but only move a portion of it, the one where the groups would head towards Gwinnett Square. That scenario results in the enrollment projections that you see in option 3 or in alternative 3. While those are not necessarily decisions that have to be made with the same urgency as our elementary boundary decision, there are factors that I wanted the board to be aware of, to be mindful that we face these kind of circumstances down the road, and a decision can either be made this year or in some time in the near future. Mr. O'Donnell, that concludes the presentation by the committee. We're certainly ready to entertain questions by the board if you'd like. If there are more questions.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the board questions first, then we'll turn it over to audience of citizens. Board questions to the left. Mr. Shapinsky.
Yes, Madam President. First thing is the dates for these meetings. I want to confirm the next few dates here.
We can't hear.
It is.
I would like to know the confirmation of the dates you plan on having meetings. I heard the 14th of December.
Right.
Was there any consideration to this being a holiday, first day of Hanukkah?
Yes, we did talk about that. We know it's the beginning of Hanukkah. That's one of the reasons why we offered 2 options for people to come out and express their public opinion, as well as the opportunity to make comments this evening.
Are you expecting action on this in December?
No. Our intent was that we would hear public input in these 2 sessions, in addition to what we hear this evening, and bring this to you in January for action. That's our intent at this time.
All right. Other than the additional information that I need from Mr. Wood about the section of Bridle Path which is in question, I guess my question towards that is really, I can understand where the 85 single-family dwellings, the new ones behind LC, are going to come and move forward into the new section of NAP, which would be prudent. Obviously, there's nobody here going to complain about it since they haven't been built. The question is, how many more kids are we adding on with those few streets?
At the bottom of page 2, item 3.
Right, I know that, 38.
38 students.
So when you did your totals, you assumed that there was 38 existing children shifting and the additional children for future growth.
Exactly.
Is that a crucial part of this proposal?
Well, we felt it was a crucial part as it relates to relief at Bridle Path.
Right now, our current enrollment projections still put it at just around capacity, if I look right in this paper you gave me. Are you expecting additional, besides obviously the 17 single-family dwellings, which if I am right, and my research today in Montgomery Township showed that they were all built already and existing, which means that there's kids living there that are coming to our schools now.
Across from the bridle path.
Right. So my real question is, I mean, is that significant relief? I mean, when you calculated 15 different ways to do this plan, was that one of them that you decided not to and then to? I mean, what kind of feedback do you expect to get from something like that? And will 38 students really give us relief?
Well, I think I can respond to that. I think your question, Mr. Sapinski, has to do with what would happen if we didn't move the bridle path segment to NAP?
Absolutely.
If we didn't do that, we would exceed capacity of 725 at bridle path next year. Our projections are that that would go to about 737, and by, well, 3 or 4 years down the road, it would continually increase to approximately 770. So we certainly felt that there was a need to relieve the potential for overcrowding at bridle path, and therefore that segment was moved.
I guess my question really comes in this kind of a form. I mean, I'm thinking about how you said you're worried about increasing enrollment at bridle path, and yet we've identified that if we remove the 83 single-family homes, everything that's already in the bridle path serving area has been built. So I guess, you know, are we expecting a rollover regentrification of the area where you're going to expect older people to be moving out and younger people to be moving in? Do you expect that the enrollment will remain the same? I mean, I saw that in your numbers. That's what you're at least planning for.
What we did, to be specific, is with all of the housing starts, we agreed, after we analyzed all the different neighborhoods, that 0.31 figure would be used. So if there's 83 units, we multiply that times 0.31 to determine how many students.
I'm talking earlier. I'm trying to figure out, I mean, you're projecting an increase that takes us over capacity.
Yes.
And you're projecting that on the basis of what, 17 new homes that have already been built?
We're projecting it on, it's based upon the existing kindergarten enrollment, on a 10% increase from last year's kindergarten to this year's first.
I understand that.
And the addition of approximately 30 students from those 83 housing units to give us that total. And that's based upon our estimate of the total number of housing starts that would move into the NAP, or excuse me, that would remain in the excuse me, I'm confusing myself here. If the bridle path enrollment pattern remained the same here, those 83 units would go to bridle path. There are other units in the bridle path sending area, I believe. Yes, there are 117 altogether. We're estimating, or no, 100 altogether, so we're estimating approximately 31 new students would go there. Yeah.
So I don't see a significant change in the enrollment unless we leave the 83 homes in that service area.
Well,
that's really my assumption, unless somebody can tell me differently, that there's a definite regentrification of the area going on, or there's something else that we're not aware of. These homes exist, the children exist, and they should be in our schools. Granted, there will be new births, and I understand what you're trying to formulate and actually estimate what's coming forward. I'm just not really sure what the shift here is for. You say we'll exceed capacity. That's under the assumption that we have an increase in enrollment.
It's based, right.
Anything, a remainder of what we have existing, which we've already seen that start to change.
And I have all those figures that I'd be happy to share with you and make public at our next session, too.
Well, that's fine. I just want that, I want a little consideration put to that before we move this plan forward.
Sure.
I looked at some of the numbers when you moved them forward as your projections, and what you did was you took the birth rates from, I guess, a few years ago, and you estimated how many kids we would use, and we gave a 10% factor for increase, and then we moved those numbers forward. And I noticed in our proposals that once you put a number in it, you never expected it to change as it moved forward for grade progression.
Right.
And I know that from history in North Penn, it's up or down, and grade retention is usually pretty flat. I understand why you use that, but that really bases all your presumptions of enrollment on basically a fixed number. Now, our PEL projections from 1994 showed a dramatic decrease over the next 3 or 4 years. We've already seen it start, and the projections are already off in a hefty percentage. I guess my question is, I know it's a guess, or guesstimate, on how you do this, but some consideration has to be taken for that. Because as we project all these changes and we base them on the capacity of our current building, we really don't take into consideration that if the baby boom bust cycle starts again, we will have additional space just by nature.
And that could be. We're aware that if we face a decline in enrollment, that's going to impact the population in all of our sending schools. So we used the straight line projection format because we had nothing else to give us as good a data or better data than what we had. The only thing that we know are the number of students who currently attend our schools and the number of housing units that exist. And therefore, we had to come up with a formula to determine how many students we could predict from those housing units, and we built that into the projection that you see there. You're right, the numbers look identical because we're making the assumption that if, for example, on page 7, if you have 81 first graders, you're going to see those 81 first graders continue throughout the system. We're not showing any increase in that number or decrease in that number. We're using what is known as straight line projections. But I'd be happy to share with you the other information.
Yeah, I
have
really
from
would like to
Vital
see
Path.
some of the data. I guess my other question related to that is I'd like to see the birth rates over the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
My assumption would be, and I don't know this for sure, but I would assume that they have been dropping.
Well, actually, Bridal Path,
already have that.
birth rates are increasing.
Well, I would say then let's look back 5 years and see if they increased, then why did we drop elementary enrollment this year? That would be my first point.
That's the hard part for us to justify.
Well, yeah, but it wouldn't be a hard part to understand that if you look back into the early or late 70s and early 80s when we went through the baby boom cycle, and we saw the bust as this area grew. We had enrollment dropping dramatically to the point where we had to get rid of 5 schools. So it's not an anomaly. I really think you really should take some of that into consideration during this calculation.
Okay, certainly do that. And as I said, I'd be happy to share any of our calculations with you.
The other issue for me would be, and I appreciate a lot of the hard work. I think you guys did your homework on this very well through a lot of this information. I know you're going to ask more questions from the board, and we're going to get on a list here, but I really came here to hear what the public had to say about some of this, because they're the ones who are going to take the brunt of this. And even though you tried to minimize the, I guess the word is pain, that a lot of people are going to feel during redistricting, because it's always painful, I still really came to hear them, so go ahead and move down the list.
Okay, Mr. Schilling.
Wait.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. One of the things that we've always gone through when we do this is housing starts. We deal with housing starts. And I assume you did it again by known permits in the township buildings. Is that correct?
Approved housing starts.
Okay. Is there any investigation or consideration of potential areas of growth within school districts when you start counting your number of students projected at a certain school? If there's known acreage that will be turned into housing starts maybe 3, 4, 5 years from now, but nothing's been approved yet?
Yeah, we have that, Mr. Allen, on especially with Montgomery Township. For example, there's an area adjacent to the Keenest Road property where there's the potential of 12 houses. There's an area on Upper State where there's the potential of 6. And interestingly enough, on Richardson Road in the Bridal Path attendance area, between Samantha and the Fox Green development, there's a potential there for 15.
50 or 15?
15.
Thank you.
So we do look at the potential when the municipality's bold enough to, or brave enough to give it to us.
Okay.
Some municipalities will not give you the potential. They can be talking with developers. The positive thing is, and we talked about this as a committee, when you look across our 42 square miles, after the 1,001 approved starts are built, there's not a lot of land left. I mean, there's going to be an incidental flag lot here, an incidental subdivision where one house pops up. But the big tracks, the farm on Tom Ensign in Hatfield is spoken for. That's the 160 townhouses. So as you begin to look around, as we do, we don't have a lot of potential.
Okay, thank you. I'm done.
Okay, Mr. O'Donnell. Mr. Hill.
No questions.
Okay, quickly, Art, right back to what you just said to Bill. You said something that some municipalities will not give you that information. That's public information. Why won't they give it to you?
We haven't pressed for it. I mean, if a builder has the potential to buy a piece of land, but they haven't put a deposit down, and they
Right.
just want to come in and talk about the potential of building houses on a piece of land, and I can't blame the municipalities. Some of them don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, but don't the municipalities keep data on the amount of open space they have and how many units could be made under allowable zoning provisions? The
Some
maximum
do,
capacity?
Some do,
And some don't?
some don't. I mean, I can't, it's unfair of me to say that. Montgomery does. Montgomery gave me in the red and the blue
Okay,
and the green. The green happens to be potential.
okay.
Nothing approved, land not transferred ownership, but potential.
Maximum capacity potential
Right.
under current codes.
Right.
All righty. I just think if they need to be pressed in order to get the best data we can, that we press them.
And as you look at, I mean, when we stood with talked with Hatfield Township, where's the land? See, they're quick to say, we don't have much buildable land remaining.
Right.
Same is true with Upper Gwinnett, Lansdale Borough. As you look at our municipalities, they're starting to be built out.
Well, if you run into any difficulty getting information, we can always get the solicitor. I mean, they're not shy about pushing us for bushes, trees, and berms. Another point mentioned by Mr. Sierpinski on the 14th being a holiday, and it was mentioned that the 10th and the 14th, there'll be comment and public discussion taken and had. It should also be noted on December 17th is an action meeting, so we always have public comment, audience of citizens. It's another opportunity. Also, the work session of January 12th. Again, I always take public comment. So really, after tonight, there's 4 opportunities allowed and planned for. And would want to assure people that if they're going to focus and honor their holiday, that there's still 2 more scheduled days to be heard. Art, again, back to the ratio, that 0.31%. I know that there was a different, there was a different ratio being used by PEO. I don't remember, maybe I don't want to remember, that 0.31, was it?
0.45 or almost 0.5.
And see, they did have a quotient in their formula to take in consideration, typical to the area, to those that would go to private schools. And yet you feel that that 0.31, there's no consideration.
We just didn't count the private school students. I mean, we had no reason to count them.
I'm talking about new housing starts and the
Exactly.
anticipation of those would.
Exactly. We only counted the ones that would be going public.
Okay. This recommendation tonight, I'm interested to know what the shelf life is for this recommendation. Of course, we plan to not be here ever again, right? But what can we look at in terms of the durability of this recommendation and its shelf life? How long is this good for?
I think if we knew that, we'd be going to the casino as a committee in a bus.
That was good.
You know, I don't want to answer.
That's on him. Where there's Dwayne, there's, no, that's on him.
Let Don answer.
Don.
That's a pretty good lead-in. Okay. We have shown you what we're projecting for 5 years on page, I think that's page 7. Those numbers reflect what we see with the straight line projection. That's our best effort with respect to the picture if the proposal is accepted. We didn't do
minimum
an
of 5 years.
analysis, pardon me?
Minimum of 5 years.
We're showing 5 years there, and we feel that this proposal will get us through that 5 years unless something happens that we could not predict.
Okay, last question. Net effect on bussers becoming walkers, walkers becoming bussers.
We didn't analyze the details
No.
of that. Art, there's,
We talked briefly, if you look at hazardous routes, I mean, it's very easy to walk, for an example, from the new development that will be next to LC to Nap, but you can't because it's a hazardous route. It's crossing
Okay,
Lansdale
I
Ave.
understand that.
So we really don't see that we're going to gain walkers by doing this.
I'm not worried about gaining walkers. That's nice net effect on budget. I'm talking about the net effect on children that will go to being bused.
It's predicated pretty much, if you're not introducing walking areas and you're still transporting 6,000 of your 7,300 kids, the cost doesn't change that much.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mosey?
Thank you. You took one of my questions. I was going to ask about the dates for future discussion, because I think we will need some. Art, along with the projected building starts, have any of the townships indicated to you if they're applying for open space? Because this will affect development. I know that a lot of townships now, because of the rampant development, are starting to look at holding or setting aside more open space.
We didn't answer that question, but in an attempt to follow that somewhat, there's not a lot of open space left to purchase. I mean, 2 acres here.
I know.
I mean, there are no large parcels.
What I'm saying, though, is that we are projecting, based on what the townships have told us that you have building permits for, there's still some open space out there, and I was just wondering if they had indicated to you in any fashion or any way whether they were considering, and again, they probably want to keep that close to their vest as well, if they're going to be looking at reserving some of that, because that would cut down on development as well.
And Montgomery is doing some of that. If you
Are they?
recognize, across from Montgomery Elementary, Windlestray will connect from Stump Road to Keenest Road.
Right.
In fact, there are some new playgrounds already built in there, some new playing fields. So they have bought those particular pieces.
Okay, and then the only other thing, I'm sure we'll have more, but looking at the Gwen North projections, currently 440 single and townhouse housing starts, and projecting 336 proposed page 5, excuse me, which you said was a total of 776 dwellings.
That was by municipality, not by attendance.
Okay. I took your .31 and I come out to something like 204. Looks like about 240 students you project. Am I right in my projecting using your .31?
Now, you have to go back to using just the housing starts in an attendance area.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, I came up with like 136.
That sounds right.
Taking your .31. And then I even went to the other column, the proposed attendance areas, and came out with like 104. I guess what I'm asking is, we are relieving the stress at Gwen North.
Correct.
This isn't exact science. I know that we're trying to project how many people, what the birth rates are going to be, and so forth. I'm just concerned that if we were to realize this worst-case scenario, if we were to realize 240 additional students 4 or 5 years down the road. Pardon me?
They won't all be at Gwen North.
Well, but...
let me show you.
Oh, I see. Well, but this says the current attendance area, and it's under Gwen North.
Take a look on page 7, if you would, and you can see in the far right side, housing starts impact.
Okay.
That's our estimate of the number of students,
Okay.
not units, students now, based on the formula, that we would expect to see in the first 2 years. Ultimately, by the 3rd year, our assumption is that those houses, those spaces, those dwellings will be occupied and 104 represents 0.31 of whatever total that
Well,
amount
that's
was.
the,
So
that.
they're added into the
Well,
totals that you see
well,
there.
Don, that's fine. That comes out into what I came up with, the proposed housing starts. What I'm talking about, you're talking about current housing starts, the first column, housing starts in current attendance areas.
Right.
Come out to 440. If I divide that, multiply that by 0.31, it comes out to 136.4.
Right.
You're showing 90 students.
Right. If you look in the right-hand column
gotta
on
look
page
at the
5,
right-hand column.
Right.
you'll see the number is lower. The total number is lower because the one townhouse, the 200, of the 251 townhouses, 104 of them are not, will no longer go to Gwyn Nor, they would go to Nap.
Okay,
That's the
okay.
difference.
All right, because I was reading as all this coming to Gwen North. I mean, if you look at this
That's-
chart, that's the way it reads.
That's where we start,
Okay.
with the current attendance.
The right-hand column shows the impact of the proposed boundaries, and therefore, we shifted the housing starts to the appropriate sending area.
I would just like to thank the committee. One of the questions I asked Mr. Venema when we sat down tonight was it better working with a smaller committee? And he said much, much better, because I know he's done this before. I was involved in the middle school redistricting, and that was a large committee, and I know that he was involved in that as well. I want to thank the committee and the principals and the teachers and everyone involved. It's been said, it's not a pleasant thing to do, but we're doing the best, and Mrs. Mingle has said it more than once. We have fine buildings out there, so it's not like we're sending our children to Siberia. They're going from one nice building to another nice building, and they're very well maintained. I'm in them all the time with Mr. Wood, so I just want to thank you for your work.
Thank you,
That's
Mr.
all.
Mercy.
Thank you, Madam President.
Solicitor, a question. At the county, there's in the budget open space grant award opportunities. Is it public information that we can obtain as to what municipalities still have applications in for monies for property they'd like to make open space? Are we
Yes.
allowed to secure that info?
Yes.
Art, do you have that? The applications on file with the county? Let's get them. Let's get them.
I think that's an important piece of the
Sure it
process.
is. Sure it is. Because if they're giving you numbers on a piece of property, they're filing for open space, then we're at cross purposes.
As I recall that program, each municipality had to design a map and
Right.
identify the parcels that they may decide to make application for in the future. So each of the municipalities should have had a map that reflects that, so you should be able to pick up those maps at the local municipal offices.
There's
Even
one
if they're
thing,
still under deliberation, it doesn't matter, we can still get the info.
well, there's one
Thank
thing that
you.
may have changed too, I
The map
think.
has been approved by the community.
That's right, that's
Yeah,
right.
but I think, didn't the finances have some effect in some people, then when they talk about scaling down or scaling back the county, Mr. Solicitor, because the money was, they weren't going to appropriate as much as they thought, or whatever? Am I incorrect in that
No,
assumption?
that may be.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying we should have a better idea now, because,
All I'm saying is the map of all possible pieces that could be used for open space was
Right.
passed upon some time ago, and that should be available in the local communities.
Okay, one last comment. The only member of the board that participated with the committee and on the committee was Frank O'Donnell. Frank O'Donnell has one child, and she is not involved in this plan at all whatsoever. He had no conflict of interest and no vested interest into seeing the decision go, or the recommendation go to one way or another. I think some of the reason why the committee works so well is because there weren't a number of board members on the committee with vested interests. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is your turn. I'd like to turn the meeting over to you, and if you come forward, state your name and address, and my word, everyone's coming forward. We don't have Furbies. Okay, we'll start to the right, and then we'll go left, right, left, right. Yes, madam.
Hi, my name's Ellen Strauss, and I'm from 6301 Rolling Hill Drive in North Wales. I come today because, one, I'm real concerned about the reorganization and redistricting of the school district, and one, I'm coming from a community that's been targeted for the third time, which is Gwinnett Point. My concern right now is that 4 years ago, we were moved from Knapp to Gwyn Nor. And I guess what I want to know is what is different today than 4 years ago that's going to say in 4 years from now, my children are not going to be moved back to Gwyn Nor. I'm real concerned about that because I feel like a ping pong ball in the community being bounced back and forth. I know my children will adapt wherever they go because I'm going to make them adapt, but I don't think it's fair for them and the other children because I don't think that there's a real vision. I'm real concerned about not really seeing the whole picture. I know the committee has worked real hard and tried to look at as many factors, and I think it is a very difficult job at best. But I'm looking at the fairness to our community and our children and how that's going to affect them.
Okay, Dr. Veneman, as these questions come up, would you either field them or assign them to the proper
Yes,
party?
I'd just like to make one comment. We're aware that some people will have been affected by these changes. We tried to minimize that. Our understanding is individual families might not necessarily have been affected, or individual students who were affected by boundary changes in 1994-95 are not necessarily going to be impacted by the change this year. Granted, we know that some families will be affected again by these changes, and we've talked at length about that in the community. I'll say that at this point, but thank you for your input.
Thank you. Sir?
Yeah, I'm Bill McRoy, 104 Manor Drive. I have a question regarding the point about the bridle path change to Knapp Elementary. On page 7, it shows that we're willing to go with the capacity in the third year at Knapp to 660, which is above the total capacity for the school. Yet at the 38 kids that are be taken out of bridle path and put into Knapp, never does it come close to reaching capacity in that group.
You mean the 38 added to it?
Yeah.
Well, that was my question. I didn't understand what the move was about.
Right. It doesn't seem like it's needed to move those 38 kids out because you're over capacity by moving them to Knapp. The third year you come over capacity at Knapp. If you left those 38 kids in bridle path, it never reaches capacity during your 5-year projection.
Well, when we look at the projections with the students remaining in bridle path, the straight line projections, it shows those numbers exceeding capacity at bridle path and continuing to grow. At Knapp, we recognize that there is 1 year where we're very close to capacity and slightly exceed it, and we also then see a downward trend following that. So we took that into consideration and discussed that particular factor, the one you're mentioning. I'll be happy to prepare those figures for what we project would occur in bridle path if we did not make the changes. But our projections show the numbers are greater than 50 above capacity and growing rather than declining.
It also doesn't seem like there's as many housing starts in a bridle path district as there is in that Knapp area. So if the projection is off, you'd probably be more off in the Knapp projection than you would in the bridle path.
Can I address the public, Madam President?
Can I have your name again, sir? I didn't hear it. Your name again?
Bill McElroy.
And you're from where?
104 Manor.
Mr. McElroy.
What town?
Would you stay?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Shapinsky.
One of my concerns when I started to think this out the same way you did, I looked at the housing starts in both areas and the estimates of 0.31 children and the shift that this change makes. Obviously, we're going to have new housing starts. Obviously, the bridle path sending area has to be changed because of the 83 new homes being built in it now.
Right.
And the 104 townhomes also farther up. But I guess my question was the same way. If I have no housing starts to be concerned about, what is the expectations of changes in the bridle path area compared to the Knapp guesstimate, which we're faced now with already being over what they project.
Right.
That was my concern too, and that's why I asked them to address that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shapinsky. Yes, Mrs. Penniman.
Bobby Penniman, Lansdale Borough. There's an awful lot of material to assimilate in a short amount of time. So, but I do want to make just a couple of points or bring up a couple of different questions. When we look at birth rates, are we looking at birth rates that are occurring within our geographic boundaries, or what hospitals are we looking at?
Well, we got it's published by Montgomery County, it's the organization that publishes that information, Planning Commission, and they gave us the figures. They calculated by municipality, the number of births in a given municipality. So we're able to determine by that how many we would expect within the boundaries of the North Penn School District.
Because,
not by hospital, by municipality.
so many people go out of the North Penn geographic area to birth their children. Is that given any consideration?
They're counted in these numbers.
They are in there. Because it's based on their
Where they
residence.
reside, exactly.
So we do have a census of babies, in other words.
Yes.
Okay. Because I've long had problems with the .31, going back to conversations we've had over the last couple of years. And as Mr. Wood very well knows, I have personal experience with a development in Tolmanson that has been an anomaly ever since it was developed 5 years ago. It is nowhere near .31. In fact, it's in excess of 1. So I'm curious also as to how far ahead have we looked with respect all of the buildings in our community. I see Montgomery and Walton Farm, both of those buildings are slated for considerable development. And if I look at the margins they have, they're going to be getting very close or over their margins within the 5-year window, and I'm wondering why they have not been included in this plan and how soon we're going to have to be looking at the plan again to accommodate other parts of our geography.
Okay, I can give you a brief answer about that. We looked at some neighborhood segments in all of the surrounding sending schools before we came to the conclusions about this one. Montgomery School District, or Montgomery sending area, is one certainly that we looked at in depth, and we did an analysis the same way we've done for all the others, and we don't show Montgomery exceeding capacity or approaching it that closely. So we felt comfortable with the decision there and didn't see there being overcrowding in the next 5 years.
I'll let that go for now. I'll probably be talking about that some more. Classroom sizes. Have we stayed within our North Penn guidelines for the buildings as our 25 and 28?
Absolutely.
We
Those
have.
are part of the guidelines.
Okay.
Class size guidelines.
Okay, even though we can't possibly determine where the 104, which year those children might go into in Gwen North, for example. All right. Ms. Mengel, my parting remark tonight would be I was interested to hear your comments at the beginning of the meeting about remarks that were made in the newspaper. Right. There were no decisions going to be made tonight. It would not be the first time that this board came to the table with decisions already made that the public had no forewarning for. It happened tonight. Not on this issue, but it happened tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Doctor.
Okay. Corey Kruger, 104 Turwood Lane, Montgomeryville.
Excuse me, sir. Could you please repeat your name? The secretary needs it for our minutes.
I'm sorry. Corey Kruger.
Thank you.
Montgomery. We live in the small area that presently goes to Bridle Path that would be transferred to Knapp, and I think it's stated that there would be 38 students affected by that, at least initially. I suspect in our neighborhood, at least, the numbers would be somewhat less for reasons that are referred to. Our children are getting older and going through the system. My son's in 5th grade, and next year will be in 6th, and then on to the middle school, and I think most of us are in a similar situation. Barring the unexpected, we don't plan on having any more children, and I think that our neighborhood reflects the general demographics of this sort of community. In our neighborhood, there really isn't a whole lot of turnover, not a lot of new people moving in. I suspect that the true number affected would probably be somewhere in the 20s, and I suspect that as time passes, as our children go on to the middle school, that number will diminish even further. In terms of, someone mentioned, what do the parents of children think about all this? Our children have been going to Bridle Path School, and frankly, we're very happy with the education that they've been getting. Their friends are there, they feel comfortable there, and certainly I'm not going to say there's anything wrong with any other school in the district, but this is what they're used to, and this is where they feel comfortable. My son, should he have to move, would have to move next year on to Knapp, and then the following year on to another middle school. It would seem to me that inasmuch as the pain comes from students having to move from one school to another, to me, for those people that are new to the district, that is to say the people that are in the new housing district behind LC, if the lines were redrawn and those students were to go to NAP from the beginning, they wouldn't have to move. They would be used to NAP, presumably like it, and feel comfortable there. And I think were that to happen, I think that if you look at the numbers, Bridle Path would probably still not be over capacity.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Brian Saris. I'm at 117 White Pine Drive in Montgomery Township, the Wynwood Estate Development. First, I want to thank you, the board, for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'd also like to thank the committee for everything that you have done. I would not want to be in your position, because you got a whole bunch of people like me that are going to tell you why it's not any good. My objective tonight, though, is really to share with you just a couple of pieces of information, a couple of facts, which I would like you to really seriously consider as you are making this decision, and I think it is a critical decision. First, a couple of facts. Number one, I am a parent of 2 children. I live in the Wynwood Estates, and the fact is, I don't want my children to have to move again the second time in 5 years. That is a fact. Also, the numbers of 38 in that piece, which is the Wynwood Estates and the piece, Mr. Sherpinski, that you're speaking about, we did a survey in our neighborhood, and it's actually 29 students. The grade levels of kindergarten next year is 0, first grade is 4, second grade is 8, third grade is 3, fourth grade is 6, fifth grade is 3, and sixth grade is 5.
Do you have births, younger children out of school or not in school yet?
Did
you survey that?
We did not. This is for next year, the numbers that I just gave you. Okay, for the first year. Why don't we want to move?
Excuse me, just a second. I'd like to have a copy of that if I could, so we can check it against our figures.
Sure, I will get that for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Why don't we want to move? I think there's a couple of reasons. There were 3 of them that I'd like to just emphasize. Number one, in 1997, Dr. Hassler initiated a program in the school district where each school should have a major goal of that particular school. At Bridle Path, our goal, our building goal, is to have a sense of community and citizenship. Our children are part of the Bridle Path community. Their friends are there, our families are there, our teachers are there. It is our community, and we'd like to continue with that community. In your statistics, when you looked at your estimates that you had, when you talk about new housing starts, of the 100 new housing starts, and this, Mr. Sherpinski, goes back to your point here, I think we need to take that 83 out of the equation. If you move that 83 out of the equation, you're talking about 17 potential in the Taylor development. All of those students currently are, I guess, believe most of them are already in the numbers. But right now, there's 725 capacity. There'd be 712 currently. If you took the 31% of the 17 homes, that's 5, you still would be at 717, I believe the number is. And in my school, or in my neighborhood, there's people like me. We're getting old. I'm not having any more kids. And I want you to know, I give you a major commitment. I will not have any more kids. Okay? I promise you that. I'm not going to have it.
There's some of us here that share that with you.
That is a fact. I also would like to make one other comment. In the spring of 1994, representatives of my development, and at that point in time, Penn Forest and Holly Farms were not there. But at that point in time, representatives came to the board at the time when you were redistricting and you were looking again. And we asked at that point in time, we were at NAP. We didn't want to move from NAP. We liked NAP. We liked the students at NAP. The teachers were wonderful. I mean, Mrs. Heckler's there. I mean, she's phenomenal. But it was a wonderful school. It was a wonderful place to be. But we moved. But you did tell us at that point in time, it might not have been this particular board, that it would never happen again. And I'm just asking you that you would look at that and consider the commitment that you did give to my development. At that point in time, my development was only Wynwood Estates. There's 14 homes in there. And now there's only 7 new children, and all of us are getting older. So I ask you to think about that and let us continue to be part of the Bridle Path community. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I make a motion?
Yes,
Make
sir.
sure he knows. That's 17 homes that are under that projection. You must remember that most, if not all, those homes are already built. So if there are children in those houses, they are coming to our schools if they're being sent to North Penn. And that has to be calculated into this factor because, you know, they make it sound like we got to prepare for 17. It's not true. They're here. People exist. I mean, this is it. I mean, you can talk about birth rates all you want, but there's people living in those homes now with kids, and they're already at our schools, so that has to be factored into this. I spent a lot of time today going to Montgomery Township to review what was going to be built, because I really wanted to know if there was some type of a pattern to the type of home being built, how many kids we get in different areas, and I hope to research that over the next week. And I'm sure that the committee did the same similar research. But that has to be factored in. You have to remember that when you're talking about this 17 extra homes, that they're already built, and they're already here, folks.
All right, thank you, Madam.
Thank you.
Hi, Claudia Herman, 110 Gwynmont Circle. I have 2 children that go to Gwyn Nor, and we love Gwyn Nor. And let me tell you, this is a very difficult thing. We will survive if we have to move, but it is a very difficult thing because my oldest daughter will be in 6th grade next year, leave, then go to Pembroke or Penndale or wherever she goes. My concern is I live in Montgomery Township, and there's a lot going on in Montgomery Township. There's the Witchwood Estate, there's Knapp Road property, and there's a property across the street from us, and Garden Golf. There's going to be homes there. I know that for a fact. Richard Roller is our neighbor. I'd like some answers, I'd like some feedback on the housing starts, what's going to happen there, and how that's going to impact Gwyn Nor, because in 5 years, my kindergartner will face what my 11-year-old is going to face next year. Before you make these moves and before you make this transition, Gwynmont Farms is that little piece that you're taking away from the rest of Hartman Road, Gwynedd Lee, and you're moving that little piece across 202, and you're moving us to Knapp. My greatest fear, and I think it's the fear of the people at Gwynedd Point as well, is in 3 years, this board, regardless of whether you're here or not or whatever, is going to come back and say, look, we've got to move again. Knapp Road's going to go straight through. What's going to happen then with the orchards? What's going to happen then with all that other development? Are you going to come back to me in 3 years and say, sorry, we have to move you again? Before we make a decision, you need to go to Montgomery Township. You need to press them. You need to find out what's going on. Knapp Road's going through. Witchwood is going to happen, and you need to find out what's going to happen. 104 townhouses across the street from us. There's development going on in Montgomery Township, not just at Keenest Road, but where we are. Before you make this decision, and I'm going to come to the action meeting, I believe, the last one, I think it's December 17th, I would really like to know some answers because that information should be forthcoming from Dan Olpair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam.
Jean Marie Meisel, 6104 Rolling Hill Drive, North Wales, Montgomery Township. I too have a lot of the same feelings that have already been expressed. I also would like to thank those people that were on the committee for the work that they did. I have some real concerns. I live in that Gwynedd Point development, and like many of us that moved into Montgomery Township, so many of us were told when we purchased our homes that our children were going to go to a particular school. You go to register your child and you find out, no, you're going somewhere else. As recent as 6 weeks ago, I called the builder of the properties at behind LC. He told me that those people were going to Bridle Path. That being said, I would like to say, Dr. Venema, you had addressed this, but I'm bringing it back. Nowhere on the guidelines did I see consideration for developments that have been moved. And I would like to say, I know that you have numbers, and I know that you have numbers that say that the children that are at Gwyn Nor were not affected. But our development, our neighborhood, our community has been. There are people that have not started their families, but have lived there since that development was built, that have plans and hopes that their children would go to Gwyn Nor. Now, Mr. Feely, I have to tell you, I did tour your school during my American Education Week, and it is a lovely school. And I have to say that I am very pleased with Gwyn Nor. My children have had a marvelous experience. And I know, too, that we would have to adapt. But I have to say that adaptation is not as easy as it's being perceived. I have young children, children that are impressionable, children that see things on TV. Children like to be rooted, and they like the routine. And I really hope that you will listen and hear us from Gwinnett Point. At this point in time, I have 16 families that have signed a petition stating their interest and concern to stay at Gwynnor, and it is developing. There are more people that are interested in signing it, and we have people from Montgomery Commons as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Venema?
Yes.
Can you put together for the next meeting a recidivism list of those schools, those communities,
We'll try to
those
do
neighborhoods that
You're
were
talking
moved?
about families, actual families where their children have actually been through, this would be a second move or more for them. That's what you're asking?
Second or more?
Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, any move at all in the 90s. Yes. Ms.
Good evening, H. Bruce Gordon, Montgomery Township. I would like to ask that for future meetings, possibly at the next action meeting, whether or not the committee, with Art Wood's help, could bring forward, with regards to the building capacities, how many of those buildings are running art and music from carts as opposed to classrooms, and could consideration of that be taken into account, that if those rooms were given back to their intended functionality, being art and music, then what would be it's been a long day. What would we be giving up as far as capacity of students? Would we then look even worse as far as building capacity goes?
I have that information, Bruce, and I'll give you that. In Gwynnor, in Bridle Path, they have separate art and music rooms. In Gwynnor, the music teacher works out of a cart rather than a separate room, but art has a room. They have rooms at Gwinnett Square. At Hatfield, they have an art room but don't have music. At Inglewood, they have an art room but move about with music. In Knapp, there's no art or music room, but of course will be with the expansion. In Culp, Montgomery, Nash, and Oak Park, they all have separate art and music rooms. North Wales uses a cart for music, and York Avenue is cart for both art and music. I have the details if you'd like to see it.
Okay, I'm sure studies per se have not been done as to the effect of students having music off a cart versus art on a cart, et cetera, whether or not that's affecting their education. But I would think that our buildings would work better, more efficiently, if the students could be moved to those particular rooms, and rooms and space were set aside for them, instead of giving up those rooms for classroom space where we're overcrowded. Thank you.
Dr. Venema, that document you were reading from, if you would put that together and provide to the board, I appreciate it, and available, of course, to the public.
Madam President, first, can I ask Dr. Venema a question on that?
Sure.
I mean, when this proposal was put together, it clearly states the guidelines for art and music rooms. I expected that this plan returns art and music rooms to every school that's affected by this change, doesn't it?
Well, it was one of the factors that we used.
It was a guideline, but you didn't adhere to it.
I need to say something about the guidelines. There are 6 or 7 or 8 different guidelines. We addressed each of those guidelines as we considered different alternatives, different segment combinations. Right. So it wasn't as though one completely met one guideline and maybe just a portion of another. We tried to find the proposal that best met all of them. We didn't prioritize one over the other, but best met all of them. And that's how we came to our conclusion.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Sir.
Good evening. My name is Paul Lapotin, and I'm at 101 Turwood Lane in Montgomeryville. And I've been hearing a lot of things tonight, and my 2 children are involved in the bridle path situation. And something that I'm not hearing tonight that is always left out of the factor is emotion. I have an 8-year-old daughter in 2nd grade right now, who for 3 years has been going the bridle path, from kindergarten, 1st grade, is now in 2nd grade. She turned 8 on Friday, and we had a birthday party for her. And we had 12 children over, 12 of her girlfriends over. If this move, the way it currently is set up, takes place, not one of those 12 children will be transferred to Knapp. She will be by herself going to Knapp. How do you explain to an 8-year-old kid who for 3 years now has 12 girlfriends, and she's not going to have any more girlfriends starting September? She's going to lose all 12 friends because they're going to be at bridle path, and she's going to be at Knapp. Nothing against Knapp. I pass SNAP every day going to work. It's beautiful what they're doing here. I'm tickled pink about it. But I agree with Vince over here when he says about the new homes being built on Lansdale Avenue. Put those people into NAP and leave us alone. We're not 38 people. I don't know where that number is coming from. In Holly Manor, we're about 22 people. And when you have the 6th graders pull out this year, it'll be even less kids. And when you look at the age of us, we're all in our late 30s and 40s, and we're done having children. I, again, am a person that can't have any more children. So you're not seeing additional population in our development. We're a steady development that's going to stay that way. This is my house for the next 20 years. I don't plan on moving, and most of my neighbors don't plan on moving. We're here, and our children are going through the system. And in 5 years, Holly Manor, you'll have a handful of kids there. So I don't understand why we have to be moved. You're talking about a few kids. And it has nothing to do with transportation because distance-wise, we're only a few feet away. We're only about a mile away, if that. You have a development that does a lot for Bridle Path. We contribute a lot in time and effort. Half the people on the boards at Bridle Path are from our development. You're taking away a civic pride that we have in this development and in this township and in this school. Please think about this properly. Don't separate us away from something we've been involved in for 3 years. If you're going to move the new homes, do that. But please don't take us away. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Evening. Dave Kravitz, 4401 Congress Court, North Wales, Gwinnett Point. Basically, echoing the sentiment I've heard here from other folks tonight. Actually, my 10-year-old son is with me. He had a concern where he'll be. He's just wondering what's going on. It's tough enough for adults figuring it out, let alone 10-year-old kid. There again, we chose this area for the North Penn School District. Thus far, we have not been disappointed, excuse me. Gwynnor, excellent school, rave reviews on my part. He has many roots there, numerous friends, would be a big, the thing is he could move on, and that's really not what we're looking at right now. Someone could move on. They're again putting it in actual day-to-day situations. The kids have to move. That's what we're talking about. I mean, they're the pawns here. I mean, they're the ones we're shuffling around. Basically, that was it. We were one of the folks in Gwinnett Point when we moved in. Everyone said, go down the NAP and register for kindergarten. And as soon as we walked in the front door, they said, well, you didn't get the memo? And no, you're over at Gwynnor now. So we bounced over to Gwynnor. At that point, it was transparent. We were impressed equally with both schools. And I guess the point I'm just getting here, now that he is here, his friends are here in Gwinnett Point, maybe want to look at some sort of an overlay program for new people coming in, or I don't know how we could work it out, but they're again shuffling what is a rooted problem, ownership, friendships. We really want to nurture that in the kids. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Joel Summers from 1042 Pine Grove Avenue in Lansdale. And I'd like to start off by commending Mitch Edmonds, the principal of Oak Park School, along with the teachers, Mrs. Koenig, Mrs. Freitinger, and Mrs. Myers, for the enthusiasm they bring to teaching kids in overcrowded classrooms at Oak Park School. Now, I brought my son, Janaea Summers, here just so I could give you a face and a name to go along with the numbers that you crunch and guesstimate. And when I went on American Education Week to sit in on his classroom with his 27 other classmates, knowing that their first exposure to education, real education, is a cattle call, and it's overwhelming to them. And to see a professional like Mrs. Myers overwhelmed, and to feel disheartened and saddened by sitting in a classroom with 28 5- and 6-year-olds, where a third might be paying total attention on what she has to say. Another third, sometimes and then sometimes not. And then to see the other third sparring with one another, wrestling, being disruptive. In fact, a few of them refusing to comply with her request. To see her going from the board where she was teaching to discipline kids, and to see the domino effect that exists when just a few students choose not to go along with the program. was frustrating. And I was saddened sitting there, and I felt bad for these kids whose lives were being played with. And I can think of nothing other than two classic Christmas characters that reduce people's lives to numbers and dollars and cents, one being Ebenezer Scrooge, and the other being Mr. Potter from It's a Wonderful Life. And it's just, you have a classroom that exists. You had one last year at Oak Park School that you turned back into an art room this year. Now, I'd rather see art on a cart than total chaos in an overcrowded classroom. These kids deserve a chance to learn. They need the individualized attention in the younger grades to prosper. And please don't hit me with the apples and oranges thing of, well, we have 30 kids in a 6th grade classroom. Give these kids a chance to prepare to meet the competitiveness in the upper grades, and they'll be able to do it. But if you shut them out at an early age, and they're hopeless, they're frustrated, they're overwhelmed, they're not getting the education and attention that North Penn School District supposedly represents, then I feel sorry, because I can stand up here pompously and say, yes, my kid will get an education despite all of you, despite who's in that classroom at the front teaching, but it's not just my child I'm worried about all children. And I want to apologize to the people at Oak Park School for not fighting harder to make sure that the classroom size was diminished and give Mrs. Myers a chance to do what she does best, and that's teach young kids, which are our future. But Mitch Edmonds, Mrs. Myers, Mrs. Koenig, Mrs. Freitinger, they've been most attentive and innovative in how they've gone about this. So if you'll excuse me, it's past his bedtime. He needs all the rest he can to compete with 27 other young kids in a kindergarten classroom that's overcrowded and understaffed. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Dawn Grow, 212 Becker Road in Upper Gwinnett Township. I noticed on page 3 that the middle school impact, that was not decided on when that's going to be voted on. I have a child that will be moved from Gwen-Nor to Gwinnett Square that in time could have gone to Pembroke, like all of the other friends are going to be going to Penndale. So when will that be voted on as far as the decision to be made?
We're proposing it for the first time to the board tonight.
Okay.
They need to reflect on the information they've received, as do many of you. There's no timeline for making a decision about the middle schools. The timeline and the most immediate concern is the elementary decision. I'm sure the board will have dialogue about whether or not to change the elementary boundaries or the middle school boundaries, but quite frankly, that really is a decision that would occur after the decision about this proposal. If they don't accept this proposal, then that could affect the middle school circumstance differently. So it's a secondary decision in terms of when it's going to happen.
So I have to tell my second grader if he moves to Gwinnett Square that, by the way, you might have all these friends through 6th grade, but you're going to be moving to Pembroke.
I wouldn't tell them that yet. No, I don't think that decision's
They, yeah, I
made
mean,
yet.
and another question is why we're moving the dark blue area to Gwinnett Square when there's people across 309 that are farther distance to Gwen-Nor than we are. Like the people off of Hartman. Is that the development?
Are you referring to
Orchards?
Hartman Road?
Mhm.
At the they remain in Gwen-Nor. Hartman Road?
Right. But why? Why would they not either go to Montgomery, which is closer for them,
Well,
than to Gwen-Nor?
I'll
And we're
let you
moving-
know that one of the 15 or so segments that we analyzed was that particular area. And we talked about the possibility of some shifts from that segment of the district to Montgomery. That in turn had a domino effect on Bridle Path, which in turn had a domino effect on the Knapp circumstance. What we ended up with was an option that had 4 or 5 different neighborhood segments affected and a lot more students impacted than the proposal.
Will we ever be able to
resulted
see
in.
the other proposals that were generated?
Well, those were all designed in committee and developed in committee. We didn't flush them all out in depth. We came to a point with certain options that we explored and said, this one won't work, or this one is better. We did some prioritizing. We made some decisions about which segments would best fit the total picture. There was a lot of deliberation, several different meetings, and a lot of discussion about each one. We had options and then a variation of an option. So there were many, many different components that we looked at.
Okay. My last thought was, if you do decide to move the dark blue area to Gwinnett Square, that you would consider moving them also to Penndale.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, my name's Michael Blatz. I'm at 103 White Pine Drive. I'm in the Penn Forest development and one of those affected by the bridle path. I believe it was Mr. Venema who had mentioned that there were different standards regarding the ratio of new housing developments to the number of children anticipated to attend schools, and there was a difference between the 0.31, and you'd also had mentioned there were some other standards that brought it up to between 0.4 and 0.5. Is that correct? Other standards that you chose not to use?
Someone mentioned the fact that a previous boundary analysis, or previous enrollment projection estimated 0.45 as the number of students in a household. Our projections is based, I believe, more currently on existing circumstances in the district. Our ratio reflects just elementary students and just elementary students that go to public schools. So that's the difference. So the committee concluded that 0.31, based on our analysis of existing neighborhoods, was our best estimate for how many we could predict to expect from these different housing units.
Okay, I just wanted a clarification on that. And secondly, what's your intention as to what to do with the number of classrooms? Because I see the standards, K through 3, 25 students per classroom, and then it increases as you go beyond K through 3. And there's different situations where the classroom size, the number of classrooms would vary based on the numbers and how they're projected to stay. For example, in Knapp Elementary, in grade 2, it's 102, and it stays that way throughout. So are you saying that are those rigid standards, meaning that are there going to be 5 classrooms in grade 2, then drop to 4 after grade 3?
Our intention is to use those guidelines when we make decisions about how many classes we're going to have in a given grade. If you have a number that, when you divide it by the number of classrooms you expect to have, exceeds the guidelines, then we have discussions about what our solution will be for that circumstance, to either add another teacher or add classroom aides at some point. As you know, enrollments are volatile and fluctuate. It's very difficult to predict that a house is going to be sold and we're going to have more second graders in a particular school. So that's something that we monitor from the spring all the way through into the start of the school year. In fact, this year we made decisions about aides being placed in elementary classrooms where we ended up with more students than we predicted when we made our judgments in the spring. So we're always monitoring that. I'll assure you of that.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
My name is Robert Francis. I'm from 13 State Street in Lansdale. Presently, we're not affected by this change, but I've seen the changes go from the first to the second and to the third suggestions, and I just hope that you take into consideration some of the children that have been moved 2 and 3 times. My children have been moved twice already, and I just wouldn't want to see the same section that was taken from Gwinnett Square moved to Englewood and then have now, instead of another section, have to be moved back to Gwinnett Square. It's just the more planning that looks down the road, it seems like you really have to look at this space of development. It's going to be developed that wasn't mentioned, seems it wasn't mentioned, and that has a great effect on all these numbers, and some of these are just numbers, and you have to take consideration the children you have in your schools now. rather than just the numbers. I think that's the important thing, the children you have now.
Excuse me, sir, where did you say you live? What street?
13 State Street in Lansdale, off of Broad.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Benjamin, you are going to get that information to us as quickly as possible in terms of
As soon as we can gather it.
moving. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms.
Good evening. Pauline Rosemartier Shepherd. I live in Lansdale on Cherry Street. I would like to thank the committee for all your hard work. I have the deepest respect and confidence in the process that you went through to come up with this proposal. I wouldn't want to be sitting in those seats over there this evening. I know it's been mentioned, but I still need some clarification on how this will affect the middle schools. I just wanted to clarify, are you saying that once a decision is made on elementary, you will then decide on middle school, or are you planning on waiting 2 years or to make that decision?
That's a very good question, Doctor. I was going to ask you that earlier at the time that it came up, that young lady right there. After a decision is made on elementary boundaries, are you looking for an immediate back-to-back decision on middle schools, or is there some
No.
time here?
I think the key component of all of this is to establish the middle school boundaries so that we can move forward and prepare for next year. The middle school boundary is, any decision about middle school boundaries is not as urgent. So that could be delayed a year or more depending on where the board wants to head. If we create an elementary boundary that might result in a change in the middle school sending area, then I think it should be discussed at the time that the elementary decision is made as to which direction we're going to take. Are we going to delay the decision or make a decision in a subsequent month or so?
Okay, give me a drop-dead date or year. Middle school boundaries must be decided when?
Well, again, it depends on if this proposal is accepted. Those numbers on page 3 show that we run into problems in the year 2000, or just after the year 2000, particularly in segment 2. So we won't experience any capacity, any schools exceeding capacity until that time. I think it needs to be discussed, and the board needs to give us direction in terms of where we're going to go with it, but not a final decision for some time.
I just wanted to mention to keep in mind that if we're trying to limit the amount of times we have to move children around, which I know we are. For example, my son's going into 7th grade next year. I'd hate to see a year after that he'd have to move, and I assume this is what you're saying, that all has to be taken into consideration now.
Yes.
The whole picture, because they're only in middle school for 3 years, and that is pre-teen years, the start of teens. I mean, that's a very emotional time, as we all know. So just, if we can just keep the whole picture, middle school included. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Dr. Benjamin, again, just looking at the middle school impact on the 3 different options here, Pembroke's capacity or functional capacity as determined now is 950?
Right.
And Penndale's 1650?
Correct.
Correct?
1640.
I don't see the nightmare if we do nothing.
I don't either.
No, I don't
Because
either.
there were more kids there when I was there, Don. I
That's
know
right.
you changed, and the goalposts have been moved, but
Well, the programs are different.
I know.
And some of that does affect capacity, but we don't face an immediate problem there based on the 10th day figures that we have.
and what if we did nothing?
If we did nothing, obviously the
At middle
students...
school, at middle school.
The students who are currently attending those middle schools would continue to do so. And that's really option 2 that I'm showing you here. I just felt the board needed to see this, to be aware that this, depending on which direction we could go, we could have problems sometime down the road.
Okay, well, we definitely need to see this, but if I can
Madam
read minds on the
President, if I-
board, we need that recidivism rate on neighborhoods that have already moved more than
Madam
once.
President, if I may say, when I was involved when we redid the middle schools a couple of years ago, and the reason we did that was because Penndale was coming on board.
Right.
And we knew we were going to have to do that. I talked to Dr. Venema earlier about this. I think we're not talking, I hope we're not talking about redistricting the middle schools. I think what we're talking about is where children going to particular elementary schools will be sent. It's not that we're going to, I hope we're not going to, go through this in middle schools and take your child out in the 7th or 8th grade. I think it's just a matter of saying that maybe you had your heart set on sending your child to Penndale, but perhaps he may go to Pembroke now, which to me is not as bad a scenario as what we went through a couple of years ago. And Linda, you were there when we had to redistrict the middle schools, and that was a monumental task. So it's not, I don't think this board, I can't speak for the board, but I don't think the intention is to do that redistricting again. It's to perhaps change the assignment where your child will go, what middle school he'll go to when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mosey. Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
Yes, George Griffin, 105 Trotter Lane. My 2 sons will be affected by this change. A couple of questions I have. I've been living in this district for close to 10 years now. I've seen change upon change upon change. A question, do you have a standard demographer on your staff that you consult with in regards to the changes of the communities?
Art, do you want to address that? I don't know if you call them standard demographer, but...
As someone who's trained in demographics and the management of growth, for instance, if you see some of the arguing that's going on in Congress today using statistics for estimating population changes and income levels, growth of communities, I guess I'm just surprised with the lack of planning, and that's what I'm seeing back here. I see all the stuff going on with the high school, why we decided not to do a high school. I see some interesting statistical anomalies in regards to the size of that high school, what's going to happen to certain students out on the outer edges of the bell curve and the bell curve effect. Again, I'm just amazed with also your 0.31 multiplication effect. If you look at a townhouse in contrast to a single-family house, the factors of children born in each of those are dramatically different. If you start looking at the small number effect that you have here, because that's what you're working with is small numbers, those numbers will be very different. I would strongly suggest contacting Temple or Penn State and help you review what you've done here, because I think you're a bit off. I do appreciate all the work that the staff did with the resources that they have, but I think sometimes it's worthwhile to get very good professionals in making these judgments. And I think we could make a 5-year plan, because we should be able to know exactly from zoning, exactly from all the controversy that's going on in our community in regards to 202 and new housing. We should be able to plan, and I'm surprised you can't do it. Thank you.
It should be noted that we did at least before I was on the board, in 1994, we did hire, the district hired the Pennsylvania Economy League to do projections for us. And those 5-year projections, actually took it out 10 years to the year 2004. And some of the comments I made earlier were because of those projections. We've seen them overstate what really showed up here. And that's been in our favor to some degree. But what you're asking isn't unreasonable. It's one of the things that I asked about the difference in townhomes versus single-family neighborhoods. What Art has tried to do, and I think I caught this because I talked to Art before and I watched how they did the middle schools. They look at a neighborhood that exists, similar size homes, similar style homes, things like that, similar features, and they try and they take what we actually have out of there. They mix into that the idea that we have 20% of the students in North Penn go to private schools. If you look at where they come from, obviously there's some demographics in there where you'll get more affluent homes, send people to more private schools. All these factors I think the committee tried to address as much as they could. They're not paid professionals. I'm sure that, if we went through that process again, it would be a little bit longer.
Well, no, I think...
Then let's take the time. Let's please take the time, because it's affecting all our children, and I think that's what this looks like. All these people spent a tremendous amount of time in regards to the resources that they had to get the answer done. But I'm sorry, it just looks like let's throw the coin up in the air and the best alignment. And again, I know they did a lot of work. I'm not putting down their work. But I think let's get the paid professionals. We're sometimes, what's the old phrase, penny wise, pound foolish? And I think that's where we are today.
I would look at it disagree to some degree, because out of the 1,001 new housing starts that Arch reported, in the 1994 PEL projection, 28% of them were accounted for. We have a considerable amount of homes that obviously weren't on the drawing board back then when they finished that program, and I think that they've done the best to do to account this. I don't think it's a perfect plan. I think we're going to talk about some more refining of it. Would it be in our best interest? We have a projection into 2004. The only difference is 533 homes that weren't accounted for during that projection.
But Montgomery Township is the source of the bone of contention here.
Absolutely.
We are on 202 and Richwood and Heckler, all that. There's so much housing that's going to go in there. And Montgomery Township, boom, all of a sudden it starts being developed. It has to be looked at before you do this redistricting. And you really need to take a look at this over. When you start
Okay. Art, what I need you, Art, I need you to come to the podium because the situation begs the question or a further explanation as to where we did glean data. I mean, we did not flip coins. I want you to start from the PELs that we have been doing for the last 2 decades, PDE studies, County Planning Commission, et cetera, et cetera. I want you to list the professionals. We don't have, thank God, we don't have a demographer on payroll among the administrative staff, but we have gleaned other professionals, and you need to lay them out.
I'll just give you some information that's very interesting. We had a demographer. We paid that person a very high fee in Pennsylvania.
You have to speak up.
Pennsylvania Economy League, when we hired them. In 1994, they made their report. It's not 4 years old yet. They reported, for an example, and this is how accurate they are, that the Charlestown development in Towamencin between the year 1999 and 2004 will have 242 homes to be completed. Fact of the matter is, they have 26, and they're working on them now. So, I mean, we can talk about accuracy, and I'm not arguing our point and our committee's point. We did, and we thought we took on the task to the best of our ability.
I said you did. I said you did. Just a second, please. Since you are addressing me, I will address you. There is free demographic work you can get from any university in this area. Who knew in Montgomery Township you were going to have townhouses? Who knew how often they were going to change zoning and trade zoning to be able to get 202 through? What else is going to happen to be able to get 202 through this area? There's a phrase I learned a long time ago in doing multi-million-dollar project management. Proper prior planning prevents poor performance.
Thank you.
And that's what I see here. Okay, so I know you have professionals. I think for the size of this district, you should have a full-time demographer as a consultant or as a free consultant, because somebody likes to be able to put down on their paper they work for this school district. And I think you could get it if you tried.
I would only ask you to come forward, and I think it would be helpful with a list of the free consultants. I mean, I think the board and Dr. Hassler.
You have much more influence as a local government body to be able to solicit Temple, Penn State, etc.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you, Art. Anybody else, please? Yes.
Jean Marie Meisel, 6104 Rolling Hill Drive, North Wales, Montgomery Township, Gwinnett Point. And I may have missed this. I remember when the committee was forming, I was told that Montgomery Elementary was going to be a part of it. It's listed here as a school in the realignment committee. And I just don't understand why they're not being affected. I look at these neighborhoods off of Hartman Road, and I know that those people, when they purchased their homes, were told that that was their school, and they are not there.
We did look at 2 or 3 scenarios that involved Montgomery and concluded as a committee that they weren't the best moves and weren't the best option. So we did look at various segments that affected the Montgomery sending area.
Well, with that in mind, one of your other guidelines was the amount of time a student spends being transported to their school. When Knapp Road goes through to Stump Road, that would be such a faster and quicker access for a majority of those developments on the other side of 309 to get to Knapp. I'll be real honest, my development is 4 minutes to Knapp and 4 minutes to Gwinnett Point, to Gwinnett. What is really interesting to me is that my children, a 4-minute ride, get home from school at 4 o'clock today. So what impact does transportation and distance have to do with where boundaries are being drawn and buses are used?
Dr. Venema, would you address that?
Well, I think when we look at the boundaries that we create in any option, we try to put them closest to the school, to the new sending school. And in terms of that, sometimes the transportation route isn't a direct one, but when we have conversations with our transportation department, they indicate to us that this is not going to increase ride time, or this is not going to create the need for more buses, and that's how we consider the transportation component. The ride time and the traffic factors and all of those kinds of things are additional pieces to this, but certainly the bus routes will have to change to reflect whatever changes we make in the boundaries. And the Transportation Department will do their best to make the quickest ride time possible.
Okay, I just really, I'll tell you, in my gut, it's just disturbing to me that Montgomery, and you're telling me that this was your best plan, it's still disturbing to me that Montgomery Elementary is not a part of this. I'm trying to listen and to take in all these numbers and factors. I still just can't comprehend, and maybe this could be further explained at other meetings, because I'm sure once this meeting gets aired and in the papers, you might need to come back to this building for this meeting, because this paper said it expected hundreds here tonight, but I think that your audience may increase over the next couple of weeks. But I too feel that maybe some of those other plans should be brought up to the public for us to see if that's a possibility. I don't know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I would add, ma'am, that I have never seen a project or a proposal of any size magnitude that has involved members of the community, that involved public hearings such as this, ever be adopted as it was presented. Other redistricting plans, guidance review committees, social studies committee made changes. Whenever these proposals have come forward, I've never seen them accepted as is. So it wouldn't surprise me in the least that there's going to be adaptations as we move on into the hearings, either recommended by the committee, the board, other administrators, yourselves, etc. So if that makes you feel any better. Okay.
I
Yes,
just have
ma'am.
one question for Dr. Venema. Gwynmont Farms, which is right across 202, it's a relatively small development. What was the justification, or what was the rationalization for moving that, which is kind of in line with Gwynedd and that side of the development? Why did they decide to move that, redistrict that to Knapp?
Well, we actually analyzed a couple different segments in that area and realized the total number of students in both of those developments did the best job with helping us bring Knapp closer to capacity and at the same time relieving Gwynedd. So these were segments that we looked at, as well as other segments of Gwynedd, and felt that that was the best of the ones that we looked at.
Now, one other question, I brought this up before. With Knapp Road going through in Witchwood, I would like to have your commitment tonight that you're going to take a look at that development that's going to go in there, which really becomes part of like the Gwynmont Farms and Gwynedd, and really take a look at, before you redistrict, the impact it's going to have over the next 2 or 3 years.
Okay, we did look at the actual housing developments that are scheduled to go in there, in all of those areas that we mentioned, that we talked about. So all of that section below North Wales Road, including where you live, and further south. We looked at all of the units that are scheduled to be developed there.
Okay, and one other thing is, you have to understand where we are in North Wales. We're on the outskirts, as well as Gwynedd. We're nor here nor there. We're not really in Montgomeryville. We're really not in North Wales. Most of my children's friends are in that Gwynedd segment of North Penn. None of my kids' friends live in that area at all. You are saying to, and I know this is emotional, and I know it really doesn't have the impact on the grand scheme of things, but you have to take a look at that. Well, this, there's nobody really from our area that was on this committee, number one. Number two, the effect it is going to have is really a very big effect. I can tell you, my 11-year-old, I'm going to suffer, and I'm going to deal with the fact that she's going to go to school next year and not know anyone. And I know it's emotional, but you need to take a look at the 6th, 5th graders that you're saying, bye-bye, you've been here since kindergarten, you're no longer going to have those friends, you're no longer going to have that reality, and come next year, you're going to face it again. And we don't even know what middle school you're going to go to. Please take a look at that. Please have a heart.
Is there anybody else? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to meet again. We're going to meet on the 10th, 14th, 17th, and January 12th. There'll be 4 more hearings before any anticipated decision is made. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.